Okay, here we go. The awesome time final is here. Okay, so let's get started. Hey, folks. Officially welcome to our MLOps Specialization Program course demo. So let me just try to, if I can able to turn off on my camera. Hey, folks. Yeah. So this is Sharad from Cyton Technologies. So I'm a founder and CEO of Cyton Technologies. I mean, we are based out of Bangalore, India. So you can learn more about us, what exactly we do in Cyton Technologies. Just go to the website. So personally, I train working professionals like you. I make sure that you could able to rule AI. I mean, so I have trained more than 5,000 plus working professionals like you who can able to transform into AI. And let's say where they're looking for their future for the next 10 to 15 years, what's the roadmap looks like. We are an expert in that. So I will be a host for the next 2 hours. Please make sure you don't miss anything. Just don't miss any second for this particular program. It will be really insightful. So let's get started without wasting much of a time. Okay, I'm just going to turn off my camera. Otherwise, you would be seeing my face everywhere. So let's focus on the content. Okay, so we have put it an awesome content. So let's get started. So let me just turn off my camera. So let's get started with this particular program. Okay, so welcome again for our MLOps specialization program, the course demo. Okay, so this program is going to be for next 2 hours. That's it. Okay, so please make sure that we have a pledge. Let's make our promise for ourselves. Okay, so in order to make sure that you stay till end of this particular program, so obviously folks who are going to stay till end of this particular program can able to download an awesome free premium ebooks that we're going to provide. And more than that, so we will be having a live demo on a cloud. So what it takes to put any kind of an AI to the production. So we are talking about AI everywhere. Like how does this AI goes to the production, right? So any kind of an AI that we are talking about, it can be classical machine learning models, or it can be any kind of a large language models. How does this AI models goes to the production? So we will be discussing that in this particular program in detail. Okay, so let's get started. So here, the next thing that we're going to discuss here, the career opportunities in MLOps. So we'll be also discussing about that. So let's get started. How does your career is going to look like in terms of, I mean, making your roadmap, transitioning into MLOps? How does that is going to look like? We'll be also taking a look here. So let's get started. Okay, so without wasting much of a time, so this is what exactly we'll be discussing throughout this particular program, the highlights of this entire demo. So what is this MLOps is really about? So what it takes to master MLOps, and we will be discussing about the career opportunities in MLOps. How does that is going to look like? Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so let's get started with our conversation. Okay, so here we go. I have a very simple task. This is like a ritual that we do, right? Right. So anything that we teach in terms of AI, first we display this particular picture, just in order to, to be more engaging. So, okay, here we go. I'm going to ask a very simple question, folks. I want you folks to go ahead and observe this particular picture. Here is a task for you. Please go ahead and describe this particular picture in a chat window. So, what do you think this picture is about? Please go ahead and just mention that in a chat window. So what do you think this picture is about? What kind of an object that you can able to recognize from this particular picture? Okay, so I will try to mention what's the story behind it later. Okay, so please go ahead and just see what is this picture is about. Try to describe this in a chat window. Here we go. So messages are pouring in already. So Rajiv says an evening stroll, stroll in a park, people's enjoying a walk with their dogs, dog park. Awesome, right? This is a park, right? Something that we really enjoy spending a time over here, right? So obviously this is a beautiful picture of a park. There's no doubt about it. You can see there are a lot of different trees over there. So you can see there are a lot of peoples who are spending their time with their pets. We do have let's say dogs here, and a dog obviously which is carrying a ball in his mouth. That's awesome. That looks cool. So obviously not just a dog, we can able to see a different breeds of dogs here, correct? So we do have a different breeds of dogs here, and we can see a men, and we can see a women obviously in a different age, right? So we do have youngsters, teenagers, obviously people's got old. So and here we go, like we do have a lot of trees over there, and you can able to see a path where we can walk. So this is a description. We know this is a picture of a park. So what's there in what I mean? So what's the deal with this particular picture for this session, right? So my question is this. Okay, so you know that you could able to describe this particular picture, but what if I go ahead and I'm going to ask, I'm going to display the same exact picture to this newborn baby. Let's consider that the baby is less than 1 year old. So I'm going to display this same exact picture to this newborn baby. Do you think this baby could able to recognize the same exact things that you could able to recognize right now? So do you think it can do that? Definitely not, right? So barely a baby could able to recognize his mother and father, but baby doesn't know anything else, right? So obviously a baby which is born with an empty brain, right? It doesn't have any data apart from the genes it has carried from their parents. But what if I go ahead and display the same exact picture to this maybe a grown-up kid? So obviously this kid could able to recognize, okay, that's a beautiful picture of a park, there's a lot of trees, there's a lot of people's, I love the dogs. Yeah, he can able to describe it. So obviously if I go ahead and display the same exact picture, if I ask this a teenager or maybe a college kid to describe, he can describe that picture even much better, right? And obviously same thing works with a person, I mean, so who is our grandfather, someone, right? So obviously, so what we are trying to achieve here, what's the intention of displaying this particular picture here? So what we are discussing today is all about AI. So what is this artificial intelligence is all about? AI is everywhere. So we are the best examples of AI first, right? So what exactly human beings are today trying to achieve? They are trying to replicate a human beings. So way we think, way we learn, right? Way we make decisions, way we make predictions. So we are ultimately trying to replicate ourselves, what we today calling it as an AI. So we are the best examples of AI today, right? So let's throw a simple example, right? So obviously you folks made a decision today to attend my session, so believing that MLOps is going to be the next big thing. So MLOps is going to be everywhere, wherever you want to deliver any kind of an AI to the production. So you made that decision. So how you could able to make a decision, because you understand what's the trend today in a market. It's all about AI, and you don't want to miss the chance. You want to be part of this particular journey. So obviously, so consider that if I go ahead and display the same exact picture to this baby, a baby doesn't know anything else, right, apart from his mothers and fathers. But what happens when a baby grows? He will be started learning from his teachers, his parents, from the books. He learns mathematics, he learns physics, etc. That's the data that we consume, isn't it? And obviously we eventually get better and better and better when we started learning and when we are moving forward in our life, right? So obviously our knowledge graph exponentially grows up, right? Each and every day we learn something, we eventually get better in that, right? Isn't it? So we are the best examples of what we today call it as AI and artificial intelligence, right? So consider that. So we consume a data in many different ways. So consider that. So you consume a data through your eyes. Visually, we see the data. I mean, you are seeing my slides. You could able to hear my audio, right? You can able to smell the things, for an example. So we consume data in many different ways, right? So machine learning or data science or AI is all about taking a data and teaching a data to a machine, and machine understands a data and the pattern from it, and a machine has an intelligence right now from that data to make a decisions, to make a predictions. That's what exactly we do, right? So you consume a data through your ears, through your eyes, through your nose, right? You can smell your favorite food. You can smell the biryani, isn't it? You can smell the biryani. You know what's the kind of a biryani it is, whether it is a Hyderabad biryani, whether it's a Delhi biryani. You can able to smell your own favorite cuisine and you can able to guess what it is, right? So again, you know what's the classification over there. So today human beings are trying to replicate the same exact things. So where we could able to learn a data, and where we could able to eventually get better in that, and we could able to make a decisions, the predictions and the forecast of what's going to happen in the future. So today human beings are trying to replicate the same exact things to these machines. Okay, so let's try to understand. Let's throw a simple data, right? So as a human beings, we consume data in many different ways. A machine can also consume in data in many different types. So let's take a simple data here. I'm going to take a simple document. Okay, let's talk about, so maybe I have some kind of a doc. Maybe let's consider that it's a CSV file. Pretty much simple. So what data I have in this particular CSV file? Let's say I have around 3 years of data, and I have around 30,000 data points. I mean, 30,000 rows it can be. So what is this data is about? Simple. So consider that I'm going to put some sensors in your home, right? Sensors. I'm going to collect the amount of electricity that you consuming throughout for the last 3 years. How much electricity that you consume, maybe in a spring, maybe in monsoon, maybe in a summer, maybe in a winter, etc. Right? I have collected all this data. So that means I have, let's say, the features, we call it as, let's say, what else that what are the parameters do you think that I would be collecting from your home? So it can be the amount of voltage that you consume, the current that you consume, the bills that you might have paid for the last 3 years. Let's say this is the data that I do have. So once I have an access to this data, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and teach this data to a machine. A machine can be a computer, it can be a server, right, in a cloud, or it can be edge devices like this. So what happens here, a machine tries to understand, learns the data. So ultimately what it does, folks, it tries to understand the pattern from the data. So how you consume, how does your electricity bills looks like in summer? Definitely high. How it looks like in winter and a monsoon? Definitely high, right? So it's going to consume that data, it tries to understand the pattern. Then it produces something called a machine learning model. A model is something which will be a part of final end product. It's not a final end product, it's a part of final end product. So what is this model? Just remember, this model has an intelligence of the data that you have taught it to it. So it understands, it has a pattern, it has a knowledge. So simple. So this is what exactly I'm going to do. I will be asking a question to this model. I'm going to ask, so tell me what would be my electricity bills looks like for the next 6 months. So it can able to make a prediction. So what will be my first month bill that I'm going to pay, or second month bill that I'm going to pay, or maybe the next 6 months that I'm bill that I'm going to pay. It's a very simple example. It can able to forecast what will be your future electricity bills for the next 6 months. Just imagine such kind of a use case that you can solve for a corporate. Just remember that amount of money they can able to save from that. So this is a simple example, but let's try to understand, instead of teaching some kind of a documents, what if I want to take the bunch of pictures of cats and bunch of pictures of dogs, right? I want to teach the difference between a cat and a dog to my machine. So I teach bunch of data of pictures. So again, it produces a machine learning model. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put a camera in front of my machine. Then I'm going to put a cat. Let's assume this is a cat. So I'm going to put a cat in front of my camera. So now my model predicts there is a cat which is standing in front of a camera. So let's say I go ahead and put an alien in front of my camera. So maybe it says, okay, there's an alien. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so you can just do that classification. So anything that we can able to do with images and videos, what we call it as a computer vision today, right? And again, when we're talking about the use cases here, the kind of a problems that you can literally solve is endless. So today we are talking about, let's say, the large language models, LLMs. So we are talking about something called generative AI, right? So it's a kind of an AI, right? So generative AI is a kind of an AI which can able to generate a new content, right? It can able to, if you can able to input a text, it can generate a text. You can create a story. You can write. You can ask your large language models to write a code, to narrate a story, to the songs, etc. And you can able to input a text, and it can able to generate a pictures today. What we today calling it as generative AI. So we know that the problems that you can able to solve, the use cases, the kind of solutions that you can able to offer is endless, right? You can, AI is everywhere, right? That's a reason. So, but what we're going to discuss today, we are talking about AI everywhere, but how are you going to bring this AI to the production? I mean, putting it in a simple way, how are you going to put this AI into your customer hands, right? How are you going to put this AI into your customer hands? What it takes to deliver this AI to your customers, right? That's what exactly what we're going to discuss today. Okay, saying that, let's first focus on a typical workflow of creating a machine learning models. I'm not talking about an end-to-end workflow to build and complete machine learning workflow. Let's talk about what's the minimum prerequisites. What's the minimum prerequisites for any organization to get started with building a machine learning solutions here? Okay, so let's get started. So let's get started from a data, isn't it? Obviously, right? So when we're talking about a data, similar to human beings, we consume a data in many different ways, as I mentioned, through visually eyes, hears, smelling things, sensually. I mean, you can also have a sense. I mean, by touching things, you can recognize what's an object, right? You can consume a data. Similarly, a machine can consume a data in many different types. So, I mean, your data can be a form of a picture. It can be a JPEG. It can be a CSV document, a JSON document, a text file, etc. There are different kind of data types, right, that we're talking about. So once we have a raw data, right, the raw data that is actually coming from your customers' data, right, what happens next? The next step in a workflow, we call it as something called data preparation. So what we do in a data preparation, similar to what we do in a kitchen, right? I mean, so if you would like to cook a food, I mean, if you're a chef, right? I don't know, like, I mean, I'm not big, I mean, I'm not a big chef or something. I could cook the food, but you know what happens? So when you want to prepare your favorite recipe of a food, what we do first, right? So first we go to the market, isn't it? Then we go ahead and buy some vegetables, ingredients, masalas, etc. Then we come back to the home. Then we started cleaning that vegetables. We put some oil, then we started preparing our favorite cuisine, right, etc. That's how it goes, right? So that's what exactly we do in a data preparation. Exactly. So consider that when a raw data that is coming from your customers, that comes with a lot of garbages in it. So I mean, it has a lot of missing values, it might be having outliers in it, right? So what we do in a data preparation, so this is where your data engineers or maybe data scientists comes into the picture. So what this folks does, they take this data, they clean it, prepare it, and transform it if it is necessary. So that's what exactly we do in a data preparation. We clean the data. So then comes experimentation step. So what do you mean by experimentation, sir? This is where the folk called data scientist comes into the picture. Folks like data scientists. So why we do you know why we call them as a data scientist? Because they are a scientist. You know what scientist does? Scientist does an experiment. That's why they are called as a scientist, first of all. Yes, when we're talking about data scientist does an experiment in an AI world. So obviously data scientist is someone who makes the model which is going to be part of your final end product that we're talking about. So but consider that data scientists can't come up with the best quality ML model in a one single shot. He will be doing a multiple iterations. You'll be changing the parameters. Just imagine, let's say you want to tune an FM radio, for an example. Forget about MLOps. Let's talk about an FM radio. Let's say you want to access your favorite FM channel 93.5. That's a frequency that you want to access. So what we do, we started tuning it, right? So let's say we started tuning your frequency. Let's say you will be tuning your frequency to 93.5. Nothing, no audio. So let's say you'll be tuning your audio to 93.3. Still nothing, just noise. But once you started tuning to 93.4, maybe you could able to hear something, but still there's a lot of noise in it. But finally, if you tune your frequency to 93.5, here we go. I could able to listen to my favorite song here, right? Isn't it? So this is how we tune an FM radio. Similar to that, your data scientist would be tuning your machine learning model until it gets better, right? So this is where your data scientist will conduct various different experiments, and he need to compare between these different experiments that he is conducting, and he need to come up with the best model that he can deploy to the production, right? So that's why here you'd be doing an experiment. Let's try to understand how this guy does these experiments first of all. Okay, so here he would be using an IDEs. So what is an IDEs? It's a kind of a software where we can go ahead and write the code. So why he want to write the code? He would be writing definitely a code like Python, obviously. So why? Because, so consider that, what's the game that we are playing here? Taking the data, teaching the data to a machine. But where is your data is coming from? And what kind of a machine that you're going to teach? Whether this kind of a machine, whether it's a CPU or GPU, what kind of a machine you have, you need to define everything. That's where we use IDEs, we write a code over there, we define everything. I'm sorry. So then we take this code and we start running. This is where we started teaching this data to a machine, basically. So that's how we get started. So once we started teaching the data to a machine, so he tries to understand the pattern and he does different experiments in order to come up with the best quality model. So this is where the next step comes into the picture. We call it as model registries. So consider that you do understand how the software development lifecycle works. So consider that you might be using a Facebook, a WhatsApp, or any different kind of a software. Tell me one thing. Are you using the version 1 of a software till now? I mean, definitely not, right? So WhatsApp has different versions. We are using a latest version of a WhatsApp. We are not using the older version of a WhatsApp, right? So obviously, when we're talking about in a software development lifecycle, versioning a software is really important. Similar to that, so versioning a machine learning model, because throughout the lifecycle, you're not going to just work with version 1 of a model. You'll be definitely producing different versions of machine learning models. So what kind of a tool that you're going to use in order to version these models? We call it as model registries, right? So we'll discuss in detail. So we will be versioning your models over there. So maybe you have version 1, version 2, or n number of versions. So then comes the next step in a workflow. We're talking about deployments. Okay, so why do we need to deploy? Right? Why we need to deploy? Obviously, we need to reach the customers, right? So you need to make your customers happy. They need a solution. You need to solve a problem. So consider that when you're trying to deploy the models to the production, or maybe what we're talking when you want to deploy your AI to the production, there are different strategies is being followed by various different organizations. So consider that maybe an organization want to dockerize their model and they want to deploy to the Docker platform. Maybe consider that there might be an organization who want to, let's say, deploy their models to the Kubernetes infrastructure. So consider that there might be an organization who would like to deploy their machine learning models to the real-time endpoint, what we call, or maybe to the batch prediction, or someone want to deploy their models to an IoT devices, to the edge devices, maybe to a mobile phones. Just remember that. So there are different strategies that organization uses to deploy these models to the production. So consider that here in this example, let's assume we are Dockerizing it and we're deploying it to the Docker platform. So then comes what? The final end customer using your application. So let's say we are talking about a client apps. This is where your developers comes into the picture. They go ahead and build a beautiful web apps and Android apps. So where they can use your model, where they can go ahead and invoke a model, isn't it? So this is the minimal prerequisites for any organization to build a successful machine learning workflows. So obviously we are talking about a machine learning. It's all about going ahead and teaching a data to a machine. So where it's all about the study of an algorithm and mathematical models, right? So once your machine understands a complex math, it can able to go ahead and you can able to go ahead and ask it to make some decisions, predictions, etc. Right? So obviously when we're talking about in the process of building this machine learning models, here comes your data scientist, or someone who uses programming languages like Python, R, C++, Java in order to build a model, obviously. So, but the question is still unanswered. So, where does this MLOps really fits in, right? Right. So now let's get started with our actual program. So, what is really MLOps is all about? Right. So before we go ahead and talk about what is really MLOps is about, all about, so let's try to understand what's the current state of machine learning across the globe. I'm talking about, so what's every organization who is working on AI, what exactly they're doing today, what exactly they're going to do tomorrow. That's what exactly we'll be discussing today. So in order to understand the current state of machine learning, so we need to do a time travel. Yes, exactly. Let's go ahead. Let's now go ahead and board a time travel, ship, and let's get into the last 10 years ago. Yeah, I'm just kidding. Let's go to the last decade. Let's try to understand what happened last decade. So let's consider that we are talking about early 2005, 2010, right? In that specific years. So let's say every organization at that particular time, they had a lot of data sitting in their organization, but they're doing nothing with the data. That's a reality. But that's the time they started hiring someone called data scientists and data engineers, so who can able to build ML models to them. So the focus for every organization last decade, they're building models, but they're not operationalizing any models. They're not bringing any models. They're not deploying any models to the production. They're not solving any clients problems. So that's the truth, right? So let's try to understand today. Already 53% of POCs, the proof of concepts, has already made into the production. It takes an average of, let's say, somewhere around 9 months for any organizations to build this complete automation to deliver their AI to the production. And let's try to understand what's going to happen by end of 2025, right? Let's say almost you would be seeing around 75% of organizations who is building models, they will be started shifting their models to the production. They will be started doing, operationalizing their AI. So what does that really means for you? Right. So let's try to understand the reality today. So consider that if you go back to the last 5 years ago, we're not talking much about AI. There is no chat GPT. Just question yourself. So ChatGPT came to the market end of 2022. Why ChatGPT is not in a market last 10 years ago? Because they are still building a models. So I'm just giving a one example, right? But just imagine it can be any kind of an organization who is working on any kind of a machine learning models. So they don't have their models to the production because they're still building it, right? So and today, if you see, it's time that every organization they started moving their AI to the production. But what's that really means for you? So if you want to move any kind of an AI to the production, they need some kind of an automation. That's what we call it as MLOps. So they need a folks and MLOps engineers, someone which a skill set of what we're going to teach in this particular program to deliver these AI models to the production. So saying that, so now we will get started. Let's try to understand. So what is this really the MLOps is all about? There's still the question is unanswered. Let's discuss that now. So when we're talking about MLOps, it's a practice of a collaboration between a different stakeholders, let's say, who is actually building those AI models. So who builds AI solutions here? Not just a data scientist. It's a collaboration and communication between various different peoples. So there would be a data engineers in your organization, there will be a data scientist, there will be ML engineers, there will be MLOps engineers, what we're talking about operations team. So the collaboration and communication between them, so what we call it as MLOps, using different set of tools in order to build this automation. So MLOps, which stands for machine learning operations, it's all about implementing an automation to deliver your machine learning models to the production, are deploying any deep learning models. When I'm talking about deep learning, it's inclusive of deploying your large language models or Gen AI models or any classical machine learning models to the large scale production environment. So implementing an automation is all about MLOps. So when we're talking about implementing such kind of an automation, will definitely increase the quality and simplifies the management process of how your organization, let's say, building, training, and deploying their models to the production. So that's what exactly MLOps is about. Yes, as simple as that. But now let's try to dive in deep and let's try to understand what is this MLOps in a high level view. So when we're talking about MLOps motivation in a high level view, when we're talking about MLOps, that's a discipline that sits intersection between various different domains. So MLOps is not just for a data scientist. It's for data engineers. It's for DevOps engineers. It's for software testers. It's for ML engineers, etc., or cloud engineers, etc. So when we're talking about MLOps, it sits intersection between machine learning, data engineering, and DevOps. So what we get MLOps, right? So let's say this intersection of practices, when they're coming together, it really drives a value in how you build, deliver, and manage a machine learning models to the production. So obviously, when you want to implement any kind of an MLOps discipline in your organization without having people's right kind of a technology and process together, it's impossible, right? So MLOps is a combination of right set of peoples that you folks going to be in the future, right kind of a technology that I will be teaching in this particular program, and the process, what we're going to learn in this program. So let's get started. So now let's start our discussion understanding what are the current challenges in implementing MLOps, right? So let's get started. Let me have some water. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm sorry, once again, folks, I believe I have exited my slides. Okay, let's get started again. So when we're talking about the MLOps challenges, right? So we're all talking about, one second. Yeah. So when we're talking about MLOps challenges, right? So in the process of you creating and managing, let's say, machine learning workflows, so every organization, they will be running into a lot of different challenges. Let's say we know that the ML model building involves multiple stages. For an example, data preparation step, so model training step, or model deployment step. So not only we have these steps, but they really lot goes into, let's say, stitching the different workflows together actually. For an example, so let's get started with, let's say, our data preparation step. So what do you think we do in a data preparation step, right? So in your data preparation step, all we do, consider that you have a raw data that is coming from your organization, from your customers. You'll be taking this raw data, eventually you'll be transforming that into training data set, test data set, right? You'll be using a training data set to teach to your machine, and you'll be using a test data set to test your machine, for an example. So what we do in the next step, a model training step. So in a model training step, what happens? You might have some additional steps inside your model training. So consider that whether you're doing single model training or you might be doing some multiple different experiments using hyperparameter optimization. I did mention that already. A data scientist who is someone who builds a model and he does an experiments. So what we call it as hyperparameter tuning jobs. So he cannot produce the best quality model in one shot. So he'll be iterating until he gets the best quality model. So consider that now I have a first version of a model, which is good. And yeah, definitely we can deploy it to the production. So what we do next? So this is where the model deployment step comes into the picture. See what happens in your model deployment step. So you might have only one step in a workflow, or it could have many steps underneath it. So consider that it could be deploying your models to the staging environment or to the production environment. So once you have a model that is fit to be deployed to the production, right? You don't just go ahead, okay, let me just go ahead and deploy to the production. No, it won't work like that. So you go ahead and deploy it to the different stages, because your organization might be having a testing team. They want to test it before to make sure that everything works fine, whether customers are going to be satisfied or not. They do all the testing, right? And then they go ahead and deploy it to the production. So consider that here. So I have a version 1 of my model. So instead of I go ahead and deploy to the production first, let's say I will be going ahead and I will be deploying it to something called staging environment, right? So here, a staging environment, we can say it's an exact copy of your production, but it's not a production. Here comes this stage will be only accessible to your internal team. So maybe let's say I'm talking about your MLOps engineers, maybe a senior data scientist, a data scientist, data engineers, anyone. They go ahead and use this particular stage. They access the model. They see if everything is working good, whether their expectations are met. If they are really happy with the model, which is working in a staging environment, let's say, then they go ahead and deploy the same version of a model to the production. So once the model has been deployed to the production, this is where your end customers, they started accessing a model, right? So that's how it's going to work. But what happens, this is not enough for me. So for my organization to consider that, I need an additional control here. So what do you mean by additional controls? I don't want to just go ahead and deploy my models automatically to my staging environment or production environment. So I need some kind of an approval process here. So what do I do here? So let's say, before I go ahead and deploy any models to the production, let's say I have an approval process. So consider that maybe I have some senior data scientist, MLOps and senior MLOps engineer. So they go ahead and review the model and they check the quality of this model. And if they're satisfied, they click on this approval button, then only the model will be getting deployed to the staging environment. The same thing works. If they approve, the same model go ahead and deploy to the production environment. So there are a lot of different steps involved here. I mean, a lot of different dependencies has to work together to ultimately build this and build out something that provides, let's say, iteration across the life cycle, right? And also provides an end-to-end traceability, right, to track that you have trained in your model development environment, and whether the models is going to be deployed to the production environment, so to which environment the model is going to be deployed. We are talking about traceability, which is nothing but the monitoring your infrastructure as well as a model that we're talking about. So this steps involves will be complicated and challenging. So obviously, let's proceed our discussion further, right? So obviously there's one more challenge that we need to discuss. So when we're talking about MLOps, this is another related term that you might have heard about it. Definitely, there are a lot of DevOps engineers in our program today. So obviously, so here folks does ask questions sometimes when I'm having a conversation. So they ask whether this MLOps and DevOps, are they similar? Definitely not. MLOps is different and DevOps is different. But what happens here, there are some common things. So let's say we're discussing about the challenges in operationalizing your machine learning models. So has some common things comparing with your software production. So I'm talking about, let's say, MLOps and DevOps has some similar things. For an example, the CI/CD practices that we follow in DevOps industry, our source and version control practices that we follow in DevOps industry are common in MLOps. But the hard truth is, so you know that a lot of times the CI/CD tools that we're talking about are not necessarily built for machine learning separately. In reality, what happens, folks, you might be using a different combinations of tools and integrations. Sometimes there might be a purpose-built tools for your data preparation, model training, and model deployment. So all of this, this can be complicated and challenging to stitch things together. And more complicated than this, there's no a single golden pipeline that you can able to follow. So what do you mean by golden pipeline? So consider that today, if I'm going to draft an architecture, so for any organization, for a complete end-to-end life cycle for, machine learning pipelines to deliver models to the production, right? So not every organization, they cannot follow the same architecture, because at the end of the day, so the requirements for technical implementations for any organizations will be different. So their organization structures can be different. Tools, basically the tools you might need to integrate might vary. So there are organizations who might be using AWS, they might be using Azure or GCP cloud platform, are open source tools. I have seen there are organizations who run their DevOps pipelines on top of Azure DevOps, but they deploy the machine learning models to AWS cloud. There are organizations still, if they use cloud platform, they use a lot of open source tools, like it can be Docker, Kubernetes, MLflow, Kubeflow, ZenML, etc. Right? So there's no golden pipeline, because let's say the requirements for them is going to be completely different. But what is going to be common will be the steps and core concepts that I recommend remind same across the machine learning workflows here. Okay, so let's try to discuss some story in order to get some good insight, a deep insight to understand. So how does this really the MLOps is going to work like? Okay, so let's go to the bedtime story. Okay, I'm just kidding. Don't sleep. It's not a story that's going to make you sleep. Okay, let's discuss this. Okay, let's do a time travel again. Okay, let's go to year 2020. I'm sorry, one second. So let's say we are going back to year 2020. So let's see what's happening in a year 2020. Let's say there is a data scientist. Okay. So he's actually building a machine learning model for theater owners, right? For theater owners who is streaming a movies, for an example, movie theaters. So the kind of a machine learning model, it actually makes a predictions or forecasting. A simple example will take how much money they're going to make by selling a tickets. So he's basically making a predictions, how much tickets that we're going to sell for a specific movie. So consider that this data scientist assured a particular client saying that this model is going to completely work fine for the next 3 years. That's a promise he made, right? But what happens? The hard truth is this model got failed in a couple of months itself. So let's try to understand the problem here. Okay, so the model got failed in next 3 months itself. Probably he promised for 3 years, but that didn't happen. Why? So let's try to understand what happened in the year 2020. So what do you think, folks? What happened in 2020? You know that. So go ahead and comment it. So what we faced in 2020? So obviously we are talking about COVID, right? So the world suffered by COVID. Exactly, Bharti. So what happens once the COVID hit the market? We gradually stop going for theaters, right? We gradually stop, not immediately. But at the lockdown, what happened? We completely stopped going for theaters, right? People gradually stopped, and during a lockdown, we completely stopped. But here is a one more exciting part. Obviously, we didn't go for movie theaters to watch movies during a lockdown, but we started watching more movies than before. How do you think that happened? During a lockdown, we don't have nothing. I mean, we don't have anything to do, right? Just watching movies. We started using OTTs, right? So OTTs has been skyrocketed at that time. That's a hard truth. So a lot of new OTTs born. We started subscribing to all the OTTs that's available in the market. So what happened? So we started watching all the movies that's available, right? So we started watching movies. So how does this example is really related to what we are discussing about? And let's talk about today. So in today post COVID world, I would say there are specific number of people who might be not going for theaters regularly, because if I wait for next 30 days, I can watch the same exact movie in OTTs. So I'm talking about changes in your customer behavior. At the end of the day, your customers are your data, isn't it? So consider that the model which is deployed by a data scientist, once the model has been deployed, right, a data scientist didn't implemented a relevant monitoring tools in order to monitor their customer behavior. Technically what we call it as a drift, right? He couldn't able to monitor the behavior for your customers. That's the first failure. So this is the one side of a story, and let's try to understand the another side of a story. Let's try to understand the side of a data. So before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. When we're talking about AI industry, data is a lifeblood, and your data has versions here: before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. So what kind of a tools? He didn't implemented any kind of a tools to version a data. So what kind of a tools that you're going to use in your organization to track and version a data plays very important role. If I want to name a one tool, I would say DVC, or any cloud platform that we're going to discuss. It can be AWS or Azure or GCP. They got their own tools that you can able to use for production. So, and then comes your source code versioning also plays very important role. It can be your data scientist or MLOps engineers. So you're all going to write the code. Code doesn't mean the Python. So for an example, your MLOps folks, you would be writing a scripts. It can be ML scripts for infrastructure deployment, JSON, etc. Your data scientist will be working on Python, etc. So consider that you are a developer. Obviously you do understand how developer works. So if you are a developer, if you write the code, tell me how many times the code that you might have written has been changed. More than 1,000 times, even more than that, right? So this is where we talk about implementing source code versioning tools also plays very important role. We are talking about tools like GitHub, or any tool that is available in the cloud, right? So then comes versioning your model artifacts and model versioning. So we did discussed already throughout the life cycle of any machine learning models. We don't stick to only one version of a models. We definitely produce different versions of a models throughout the life cycle. And what kind of a tools that we're going to use here in order to version your machine learning models? Obviously you can do mention that, Sharath, why don't we use GitHub itself? No, GitHub is not made for that. You can again mention, so why don't we use GitHub itself to version a data? So GitHub is not made for hosting the large data, right? So that's why. So consider that when we're talking about versioning your machine learning models, there are dedicated tools. We call it as model registries, right? The model registries are tools that you can able to use to version your models and artifacts of your models including. So So this is what exactly we are talking about, the MLOps challenges that is similar to DevOps, saying that. So now let's dive into the very important topic here. What it takes to master MLOps. I'm talking about you. So what it takes for you to master MLOps here. So let's try to discuss that. Okay. So let's get started. In order to understand how to master MLOps, first we need to understand the components of MLOps. So let's get started with that. So when I'm talking about the components of MLOps, so we will be getting started with understanding the use case first, right? Use case discovery. So obviously any organization, first they need to have a use case. When we're talking about an AI industry, right? When you're talking about building an AI, first you need to have an access to the data. So you need to do that feasibility study, understanding the business, use case identification, and data understanding. So consider that if any organization, they don't have an access to the data, and they don't have a resources to harvest the data in the future, there's no point of talking about data science or AI or Gen AI today, right? Data is everything here. Let's consider that any organization, yeah, they have a data. So then comes data engineering step. So this is where your data engineers comes into the picture. So consider that in your organization you don't have a data always centralized. Your data is scattered. Maybe you have a Salesforce database where you might be getting some data. You might be having in-house database where you might be having some data. So data is scattered here and there. So this is where your data engineers comes into the picture. They build what we call it as data pipelines to harvest the data and put it in a centralized repository. So then comes, we build what we call it as machine learning pipelines, which takes that data from data engineers who builds, trains, and deploys a machine learning model. So then comes the production deployment. So once we have the right kind of a model, then we go ahead and deploy that to the production. So then comes the post deployment challenges. We start monitoring those models, which is running in a production. So this is where, if we dive deep, so the first step in a workflow, we discuss what is data preparation is about. So once the data preparation is done, then comes, let's say, learning an algorithm. So this is where your data scientist picks the right kind of a machine learning algorithm, machine learning frameworks to start building and training a machine learning model. And obviously we discussed, your data scientist does what we call it as experiments. He cannot come up with the best quality model in one shot. He does different iterations, experiments, and then he comes up with the best quality ML model. But you want to deploy these models to the production, but what is a benchmark that helps you to decide this is the best model that you can able to deploy to the production? So there are metrics that data scientist calculates in order to decide whether it's a good model. Okay, can we deploy it to the production or not? So once your metrics are good, then we planning for model serving. So that means we'll be planning for going ahead and deploying the model to the production. So when we're talking about deployment stuff, we discussed there are different strategies. The organization picks the right kind of a strategy to deploy the model. So this is where we go ahead and implement an automation, the CI/CD pipelines, all those stuff comes into the picture, right? Then we start operating the models in a production. Then we go ahead and start implementing a model monitoring tools, are monitoring tools to monitor the complete infrastructure here, right? So then we started learning a lessons from the monitoring jobs, and we keep on optimizing this further, basically, right? So this is the cycle, this is the components of MLOps, basically. Okay, saying that, so now you have an idea. So with an idea, let's now take a look and let's try to understand what's the highest level of automation going to look like in AI industry. So there is a for what we are talking about here, any organization today, they are willing to move from an automated ML pipelines to complete CI/CD integrated pipelines. So I mean, we are talking about a traditional way of building a pipelines. We are taking a data, doing data pre-processing, training a model, and deploying it. So we want to move from automated ML workflows to completely incorporated CI/CD pipelines, because where you have a more automations can be implemented. So before we talking about the incorporated CI/CD practices, there is a term that we use in industry, folks. We call it as MLOps maturity level. See what happens. Any organization who is working on AI, so on a day one, they don't implement complete automation. We say organizations who are in a level 0, they don't implement complete automation. So they go step by step. So level 1, that's where the automation starts. Level 2, level 3, level 4. So level 4 is the highest level of automation that you can able to implement today. So level 4 is called automated retraining pipelines. So what is that? Let's discuss that now. So we will be building at least one project in every cloud in a level 4 architecture project. in this program, one in AWS, one in Azure, one in GCP, one with open source tools. Okay, so let's try to understand, right, what does this level 4 architecture is going to look like. The first step, identifying an ML project. Obviously, let's consider that an organization has a use case. Then comes the next step in a workflow. We do understand right now your data will definitely have a versions. Implementing data versioning tools plays very important role. It can be any tool that your organization would like to use. It can be DVC, which I mentioned, or Azure AML, or Azure Machine Learning Studio, SageMaker in AWS, or Vertex AI in GCP. They got their own tools that you can able to use it for versioning a data. So then comes data pre-processing step. So we do understand what is data pre-processing. It's all about teaching a data to a machine, cleaning it, right? Sorry. So data pre-processing is all about what I'm talking about, taking a data, cleaning it and preparing it and transforming it. So in order to conduct this data pre-processing step, here comes your data engineers and data scientists. They write a lot of code. It can be a Python, etc. So, and again, obviously the code that you write will definitely change in the future. In order to manage the source version is really important. This is where we integrate code repositories. It can be GitHub, Azure repositories, code commit in AWS, or etc. Whatever you want to use it in your organization. Then comes for model building. So model building is all about taking a data, teaching a data to a machine. So this is where, again, I want to write a code. I want to mention what kind of a machine that I'm using, where is my data is coming from, etc. Right? So again, this code will be also versioned by using code repositories. Next step is model training. This is where the training happens, the data learning happens, right? So this is where we integrate something called feature stores. So what is this feature stores? Feature stores are basically what we call it as a schema repositories. For an example, so consider that any data set that we're talking about, it has a features. For an example, let's say the features that we're talking about, it can be voltage or current or bills or maybe power. So consider that you have a CSV file where you have a voltage, the current bills that you paid for last 3 years, and the power that you consumed. So consider that any organization, they might have different features, and they are not, most of the time they're not going to use all the features to build a model. They're going to use the relevant features that is going to be helpful for solving the problem. But you can solve multiple problems with the same client, with the same data set. So consider that here, together with voltage, current, and bills, this can be a version 1 of my feature, and together with voltage, current, bills, and powers, this can be a version 2 of my feature. I can use different versions of features for solving a different problem. So feature store is basically a tool that keeps versioning your features, and where you can able to generate a dynamic features too. But feature stores are not databases. You don't get the data there. You all version your schemas. So you get the feature from feature store, you'd be getting a data from data versioning tool, and you'd be started building a models. So once you build a models, the output of it would be a model artifacts. So model artifacts are combination of your machine learning models, including a metadata of the model, right? So what happens next? Okay, we do understand throughout the life cycle of developing any kind of an AI, we will be producing various different versions of models. So for that, in order to version that, we do use something called model registries. So then comes, so you have a model registry, you have version 1, version 2, maybe let's consider that the latest version of a model that's available is version 3. So now comes the next step in a workflow is deployment. Again, so we integrate, we use the CI/CD pipelines here. So maybe you want to Dockerize your model, go ahead and deploy to the Docker platform, and different infrastructures where you want to deploy your models. So we grab the latest version of a model. So then we go ahead and start integrating it and go ahead and start deploying it in the production. Then we started operating it. So then comes a traceability. So implementing an end-to-end monitoring tools. I'm talking about not just monitoring a models is important here. You need to monitor the complete infrastructure. Just imagine this complete infrastructure that we have built. You need to monitor the infrastructure where your data is being versioned, where models are getting trained, where feature stores are implemented, where model registries are implemented, and models that is deployed to the production. You need to monitor the complete infrastructure, including the models that you're deployed to the production. So we use different tools for that. So then comes, we are talking about automated quality gates, where we implemented a feedback loops along with that. So what is this automated quality gates? So how does any organization decides whether it's a best model? Can we go ahead and deploy this model to the production? So there are always a benchmarks that organizations have. So we are talking about a metrics. So consider that if I'm training a regression model, your data scientist uses a metrics. So for an example, let's talk about something called MSE. So you don't need to have a deep understanding of what is this MSE. It's called mean square error. It's a kind of a metrics, a number that your data scientist relies on to deploy this model to the production. So consider that they have a benchmark saying if my MSE score is less than or 7, less than or equal to 7. So the 7 is a benchmark. If this is true, right? So if this condition satisfies, that means your model get registered to model registry, otherwise it won't get registered to model registry. So they have a benchmarks. So you can able to use this automated quality gates in order to decide whether this model going to be registered to a model registry or not. You can also have automated quality gates at the side of a data pre-processing side. Consider that if your data is not getting prepared properly, so the pipeline ends over there here itself, it won't execute further, right? So this is what exactly what we're talking about level 4 architecture projects. And then comes a scheduling, right, also comes into the picture. So what do you mean by schedule? So consider that you have a first version of a model in a production, right? Let's consider that you have a first version of a model to the production, and we know that we won't be having just a one version of a model through the production for a life. So we will be definitely producing the different versions of a model. This is where we're talking about scheduling. So automated scheduled pipeline. So consider that you have a clock. So where you have mentioned, so once in every 3 months or once in every 6 months, based on the requirements of your organization, it go ahead and automatically runs this pipelines again once in every 6 months. It will automatically do data preparation, data pre-processing, model training, model evaluation, and it will go ahead and produce the second version of a model, and second version of a model get deploys automatically to the production basically. So this is what exactly we are talking about, an automated retraining pipelines, what we're going to also build in this particular program. So yes, so obviously this is what exactly we are talking about level 4. A level 3 or level 2 where we're talking about a less automation that we'll be also focusing. Saying that, so now let us try to discuss on another interesting topic here, the different roles involved in the journey of MLOps. So obviously when we're talking about developing a successful machine learning project, it involves variety of experiences. Obviously it requires extreme collaboration among a team, there's no doubt about it. So but the thing is, so you need to let's say for an example, you need to have a right kind of an expertise to work on a right kind of a technology here. So consider that the different tech stack are different peoples who would, what that you would be also working in terms of building an AI that we're talking about, right? So obviously when we're talking about different kind of roles, it's completely depending on their organizations, right? So depending on how much budget they have, they're going to hire different peoples here. So for an example, let's it can be a data engineers, a data scientist, business analysts, DevOps engineers, app developers, or etc., right? What we're talking about. So consider that, let's start from your data analyst, right? So data analyst job is all about working with product managers and business team. So your data analyst, he drives the insights from the user data. So obviously when we're talking about data analyst, you'd be working on a range of data visualization tools. It can be Power BI, it can be Excel sheets for an example, or Tableau, etc., right? So then comes your data engineers basically. So when we're talking about data engineers, so data engineers make sure the infrastructure for harvesting a data for an example, right? So infrastructure to collect, transform, and pre-process the data. So they would be working with range of tools like Spark, Hadoop, ETL tools. And when we're talking about data engineers, they would be also working with, let's say, the feature stores that we're talking about, data versioning tools, etc. So then comes our dear data scientist. Obviously, they build some machine learning models, which will be part of the final end product. So then comes a research or applied scientist. So you don't so you don't see kind of a roles in most of the organizations, because especially the organizations who are working on a cutting edge technologies. So where you see this kind of a roles, maybe let's say we're talking about maybe organizations like Meta, Google, Apple, etc. So mostly this folks would be developing a new algorithms for the various different product related areas. And then you should able to see the roles like ML engineers or DevOps engineers. We don't call as a DevOps engineers when you're being part of AI. So we call it as ML engineers or MLOps engineers for an example. So machine learning engineers, their work will be overlapped with data engineers, but they largely focus on machine learning models and related infrastructures. So the duty of your ML engineers would be taking a model from a data scientist and deploying that to the production. So then comes, you have your developers. So we can say developers are someone who is going to implement or integrate everything that to the main application. So where we are talking about, he would be building a client side applications, right? So then comes our dear MLOps engineers. So MLOps engineers are someone who integrates everyone, who builds a complete end-to-end ML pipeline, which is going to integrate all these peoples to work inside the infrastructure that you're going to create, at the ML pipeline that you're going to create. So all these peoples will be part of the pipelines, the automation that you're going to build as an MLOps engineers. So obviously, till now we have heard more about MLOps. Obviously, so why don't we have a taste of those tools, right? We'll see what are the different recipes of tools that we do have across this world. So let's go ahead and let's try to discuss on a different tools for MLOps. So obviously every organization's requirements are different and the kind of tools they want to use is different. So here I have tried to put it some of the tools which will get you an idea. So what are the different variants of tools that is available in the market? So let's get started. So obviously we are talking about the different tools for MLOps. I'm sorry, one second. Okay, so we are talking about the different kind of tools for MLOps here. So let's get started. So let's say we are talking about the tools for data versioning, experiment tracking, the code versioning, model registries, model monitoring, etc. What we are talking about. Right? So let me just try to zoom in, and so where we can start discussing. So we do understand the traditional way of building a models. So first, we will be having an access to the data. We collect the data, right, through our data pipelines, collect the data, labeling it. So then comes a data exploration step. This is where we go ahead and start cleaning this data. So once the data is clean and prepared, then we go ahead and start using the data. Then we started training the model. We start teaching the data to the machine, and then we evaluate a model. So then finally we go ahead and deploy the models to the production. So to implement such kind of an automation, so what are the different variants of tools that we use in organizations? So what we call it as MLOps stack maturity. So let's try to discuss starting from the different development IDs that your organization uses. So obviously, when we're talking about your developers, it can be your MLOps engineers, someone who want to write a script, a data scientist, someone who want to write a code, maybe like a Python code. So they would be using various different IDs. It can be Jupyter notebooks, VS Code, Spider. There are different kind of an IDs, right? So then comes for code versioning, right? We do understand the importance of versioning a code. There are different variants of tools. It can be GitHub, for an example, which you are very familiar with, or maybe there are different set of tools, Bitbucket, or something on AWS, something on Azure or GCP. So then comes a data labeling tools, the specific tools that will be used by your data scientist in order to label your data. So then comes data exploration and visualizations. So obviously we human beings are visual beings, right? So if let's consider that I'm going to provide you a CSV document which has a 30,000 rows in it. If I want you to go ahead and extract some insights out of it, it would be a hard thing to do. So obviously if we could able to go ahead and visualize the data by using some data visualization tools, it can be let's say tools like Matplotlib, Seaborn, etc. So we can able to visualize, we can able to generate an insights from it. So there are different tools that we use over there. So then comes a feature engineering tools, right? The different set of tools that your data scientist will be using in order to conduct feature engineering, sklearn, feature tool. This particular slide that you're trying to observe here, it has a set of cloud tools, it has open source tools, as well as a commercial tools that's outside in the market. So commercial tools are like subscription tools. Like say it can be a features tool, or like open source tools like Feast, for an example, right? Okay, then comes model training. In order to teach a data to a machine, as I mentioned, your data scientist will be using algorithms, machine learning frameworks like PyTorch, XGBoost, Keras, etc. Okay, so then comes building POCs and applications. So consider that once you have a model, you don't just go ahead and deploy to the production. You develop first. Any organization develops a proof of concept. They want to verify that the model they built that does really works for them or not. So this is where we use tools like Jupyter Notebooks or Streamlit to go ahead and do the POC, a quick test, right? How your application works. So then comes for model debugging and visualization. There are different set of tools that's available in the market like Neptune.ai. TensorBoard is open source. Our weights and biases like a commercial tool. And we did discussed about hyperparameter optimization, experimentation that is done by your data scientist. For that, he would be using different kind of an SDKs, Kerastune. There are different tools that you can able to use. So then comes an experiment tracking tools, right? Where the duty of an MLOps engineers. So experiment tracking tools like implementing an infrastructure. Let's say we are talking about using very famous tools like MLflow. MLflow is a tool that you must have in your resume. So then comes Neptune.ai, weights and biases, TensorBoard can be also used for experiment tracking. So then comes model packing. So consider that if there is a Java developer who builds a Java application and he creates a jar file, a final executable file, a package that you can able to deploy, right? Similar to that, when you're building a machine learning model, you pack a model in various different ways. It can be, let's say you're packing a model using TensorFlow or PyTorch, or you're using MLflow or Bento ML, or let's say you're training a models on top of SageMaker or Azure or GCP. They packs a models in a different way for you. And then comes a model serving. So where do you serve your model? I mean, where do you deploy this model? So you deploy the models in various different ways. I did mention that maybe you are looking for Dockers, Kubernetes, real-time endpoint, batch on top of your mobile phones, IoT devices. There's endless of ways. So here we will be going ahead and deploying the models. So I have mentioned only a SageMaker here, but there are different tools as I mentioned. So then comes workflow orchestration. So this is where we are talking about building a complete automation to deliver these models to the production, but you need to have some kind of orchestration. What we're talking about a step-by-step approach, right? So there are a lot of tools. AWS has their own SDKs, Azure and GCP are open source tools like Apache Airflow, Kubeflow, ZenML, or MLflow. I mean, are, let's say we are talking about Olahai, etc. And obviously we are talking about versioning a data. So we just discussed about the importance of versioning a data. I did mention about a tool called MLflow, isn't it? Or let's say I'm talking about DVC for an example. So here, not just a DVC that's available in the market, but there are a lot of other tools. Let's say for an example, Git large files. Git itself has a tool. It's called Git LFS, Git large files. Or maybe you want to use commercial tools like Walahai or weights and biases. Or then comes model registries, the different kind of model registries that organizations might use. So let's say if you're going to work on AWS has SageMaker. SageMaker has its own model registry. Similarly, in Azure ML Studio, in Vertex AI and GCP, are open source tools like MLflow is a pretty much famous tool that you can able to use for versioning of models. Are weights and biases, high, etc. Then comes model monitoring tools. Let's say once you deployed the model to the production, the actual duty starts for any organization to monitor the models in the production. You can use various different tools. It can be Seldon or SDKs on top of SageMaker, pretty much open source. A famous tool, it's called Evidently AI, which you want to use. Or then comes feature stores. We discussed about the importance of feature stores. Maybe you want to create a feature store where you want to version your features. You can use a feature stores on a cloud. AWS has one, Azure and GCP. Or you want to use open source tools like Feast or Tecton, a commercial tool, right? So these are the different flavors of tools that your organizations might use. But as I mentioned, there are more tools than this, right? So now let us try to discuss. So what's the key features, right, of this MLOps tools here, right? So what do you mean by the key features of this MLOps tools, right? Consider that here we have various different peoples coming from various different backgrounds, right? So consider that as you mentioned, I've seen there are DevOps engineers, there are data engineers, there are software testing engineers, managers, IT managers, etc. Right? So consider that when you are starting your career into AI, especially into MLOps, there are different kind of roles, the positions that you can able to focus. Maybe consider that you might be having just 2 to 3 years of experience. Maybe consider that you do have more than 18 or 20 years of experience, right? So we do have candidates who take our MLOps specialization program. People's We have more than even 15 to 20 years of experience candidates also take this particular program, at minimum 2 to 3 years of experience. But the question is, where do you position yourself? What do you have in your resume already? What kind of an expertise you have? What kind of a job roles that you can able to apply? It's more important. So consider that maybe someone who are looking for a lead positions in MLOps, like let's say MLOps lead, MLOps architect or specialist kind of roles, right? So what kind of a tool that you're going to pick to your organization? So architects are someone who decides what tool to be used, what cloud, what tool in a cloud, right? So how do you decide? So whether you're going to decide based on, let's say, whether you're going to use open source tools or closed source tools, right? So obviously we know that open source tools are always free and you can able to easily integrate with other MLOps tools. There's no doubt about it. But the only difficulties comes into the picture when you have very few developers who have a knowledge on that, right? Then comes platform versus specific tool. So consider that there are cloud based tools,
there are open source tools, right? So cloud, you know that it can be a public cloud and you have a full control on that. Or let's say you want to go for let's say specific tools as well. So let's say we are talking about commercial tools. So there are commercial tools that's outside in the market. It's not a cloud. Let's say it's not open source tools. Let's say you'll be paying a subscription for them and you'll be using that, right? So there are tools like that. So which tool that fits for your organization? So then comes model and production environment monitoring. We do discuss the importance of monitoring your infrastructure, the complete infrastructure that you deployed, as well as the models that you're deployed to the production. So the tool that you're going to pick, does that offers model or environment monitoring in order to ensure that your production bugs are documented and fixed in a time, and making sure that your MLOps team could able to catch all the compliances and security related concerns and they can able to address. And most important thing here in MLOps, what you need to understand, it's all about templating and cataloging. So what do you mean by that? So consider that when you folks started working with any industry, right? So you won't be just working with a one project throughout your life. You'd be working with various different projects. You'd be delivering various different projects and pipelines to various different organizations. But the question is, are you going to reinvent a wheel again and again, right? Definitely not. So this is where templating comes into the picture. When we're talking about MLOps, it's all about templated workflow, right? So consider that maybe you have a one successful project. Maybe consider that you have delivered a large language model or classical machine learning models to the production. So then let's say consider that there might be another client where you want to build a same kind of a solution. So you're not going to build again the complete you're not going to reinvent a wheel again. Here you'd be taking an existing template, you'd be making a minimal changes based on the client requirements, and you'd be building you'd be using the existing template to deliver your models to the production over there. So we are talking about templated workflows. So then comes model training, tuning, and drift management, right? So does the kind of a MLOps solution that you are trying to implement, does that provides an automation for automatically bring the data, train the data to the machine, evaluate it, and go ahead and deploy this model to the production? So we are talking about building this complete level 4 architecture. Does that tools provides you that kind of a features? So then comes a pipeline management. So the most interesting aspect. So consider that when we are talking about any organization, you won't be the only person who would be working here. So you might be having data engineers, you might be having a data scientist, ML engineers, you might be having an MLOps engineers, etc., senior folks, etc. So consider that when the pipeline is running, so consider that there is a pipeline, so where your models are getting trained, and let's say unfortunately the model training job got failed. So who I need to notify? I need to alert a data scientist because he is the responsible fellow, right? Someone who is going to uh, conduct the data science jobs. So does the tool that you're going to use, does that helps you in automatically trigger updates, right, to your team? Maybe updating your code, data management, and model building, etc., right? So then comes collaboration and communication capabilities, folks, right? So consider that MLOps is all about collaboration and communication. So you have to document your commands, questions, your workflows, what we're talking about, templates, etc. So when we're talking about using integrating project management tools like Jira, or maybe working with ticketing softwares, or maybe let's say integrating communication tools like Slack, so it does improves clarity and transparency in how your organizations work. Saying that, so we do understand the key features of MLOps tools. And now let's head towards, so what cloud platforms offers in terms of MLOps. Let's say here in this particular program, so not a one cloud that we would be focusing on, we'd be focusing on a multi-cloud. So we'd be covering MLOps and DevOps on 3 different clouds, that is AWS, Azure, GCP. The question is, why cloud? So why do we really need to talk about a cloud? Obviously, so every organization today, they run their majority of workloads in a cloud. The cloud is the next big thing. And again, we are talking about just the 3 major players that's outside of the market. Let's say we are talking about AWS, Azure, and GCP, because they holds a major market share, right? So most of the organizations across the world, they would be using either AWS or Azure or GCP, right? So yes, when we're talking about our MLOps specialization program, we would be covering anything related to DevOps, that the DevOps that is needed for MLOps, and MLOps on top of AWS, Azure, and GCP. So not limited to the cloud platform, open source tools also we will be covering in this particular program. So why open source tools? So consider that there are organizations who still use cloud, they use open source tools. So for an example, Dockers or Kubernetes are open source tools. Or let's say we're talking about tools like MLflow, right, which is a pretty much famous tool for versioning your machine learning models. Amazon SageMaker has integrated MLflow today, which is open source tool. Or maybe Azure Machine Learning Studio, they use MLflow SDK to build an end-to-end ML pipelines in their Azure Machine Learning workspace. So understanding open source tools as really important when we are comparing also with the cloud platforms. So now let us try to get the flavors of tools that we will be learning throughout this particular program. So we'll be getting started from the Git-based tools. So when I'm talking about Git-based tools, we are talking about the tools that we're going to use in order to understand the source versioning. So we'll be getting started from Git from scratch. We'll be understanding how to work with Git-based commands, working with remote repositories like GitHub, or working with Azure repos, or any kind of a repository that you might be having in your organization, right? So then comes understanding CI/CD tools, right? So when we're talking about CI/CD, I might have used this term a couple of times here, right? So it's all about continuous integration and continuous deployment. So what is that, right? So when we're talking about CI/CD, it's all about the practice that we use in order to deliver a newer version of a software to the production. CI/CD is a strategy, a method that we use in any software industry to deliver a new version of a software to the production. So CI/CD pipelines obviously focusing on improving a software delivery throughout the software development lifecycle. And here we'll be trying to understand how we can able to adapt the existing CI/CD tools to build an automation to deliver any kind of an AI to the production. So before that, we need to understand how CI/CD works. So let's get started. So consider that there is an application which you have to deliver to the production. So consider that here comes your developer who would be making some changes to the code. He would be writing a code and he would be pushing the code to a code repositories like GitHub. So then comes, this is where we make some changes to the code, commit changes happens. So once and automatically the code has been pushed to a repository, here comes a trigger build. So what do you mean by trigger build? So once you push your code to a code repositories, here comes your CI tools, which has an intelligence to understand you have made some changes to the code. It will automatically pull the newer changes of your code and it will start building your application. So consider that there is a Java developer who has built a Java application, and now we will be started building the particular Java application. So once your application has built successfully, we notify saying that your build is completed. Then comes, we don't just go ahead and deploy this app to the production, because you need to do some testing. So this is where we start running some testing. And if your all test things are passed, right? So once your application has cleared all the tests, we notify again your testing is passed. So then finally we'll be focusing on delivering the application, a jar file, to the production, for an example, right? So we'll throw a simple example. So consider that you want to, let's say you're accessing an e-commerce website. It can be amazon.com, Flipkart, any e-commerce website that you do have. So consider that in a production, there is a green color pay now button. So anytime you, let's say if you're trying to buy the product from e-commerce website, let's say you're hitting a green color button, right? We know that green is not so much attractive, red is so much attractive, isn't it? Yeah. So that's why we customers started giving a feedback saying that, okay, we didn't like the green color. Okay, so the finally organization, they accepted. And now here comes your developer from his local PC is making the changes to the code, and he's changing the color of a button from green to red. And he will be pushing this new changes to the different branches that he has in a code repository in a GitHub. So consider that he will be initially pushing the code to a dev branch. So once the code is available, let's say if we are using AWS DevOps tools like code pipelines, so even it has an intelligence saying that a developer has pushed the new changes of a code, and it will automatically start gathering the new changes. It will start building the newer version of your app. So then it generates an artifacts, a final deployment package, and we use these artifacts. Then we finally go ahead and deploy your application to your web server. So initially what we do, we go ahead and deploy your initial version of your app to a dev environment. As we mentioned, it's only accessible to your internal team. So your team go ahead and checks the further functionality of this button, whether the functionality of this button is working, can we able to click it, Is that working or not? And if you're fully satisfied with that, in the next workflow, you go ahead and deploy the same red color button to your production environment. So that's how it's going to work. So let's try to understand the same kind of a workflow for MLOps pipelines here. Okay. It's the same thing. Here comes your data scientist. It can be your MLOps engineers. It can be ML engineers. So anyone makes some changes. So consider that when we're talking about MLOps or maybe the complete AI industry, your data scientist mostly working with building a models. Let's say you would be working mostly on a Python, for an example. Your MLOps engineers, ML engineers, they would be working limitedly on a Python, but still they would be working more on an infrastructure. So MLs, JSONs, as different kind of a scripts that they would be working, for an example. So consider that if anyone makes some changes to this code and they will be pushing this particular code to a code repository, here comes your code repository. So automatically your MLOps pipelines has an intelligence to understand there's a changes in your code. So there comes the first step in a workflow. It will automatically started doing data pre-processing. What we're talking about, feature engineering, right? So once the feature engineering is got over, the next step in a workflow is automated model training. So this is where we started feeding a data, where machines started learning from your data. So then comes the next workflow is basically model evaluation. So you need to evaluate whether it's a best model. Can we go ahead and deploy this to the production? So you evaluate it against to the benchmarks that is desired by your organization. And then comes the condition step. So this is where you would be going ahead and executing a condition step. This is where we have a condition. If my MSc score is less than or equal to 7, the 7 is a benchmark that you set. If it is true, it will go ahead and register the first version of a model to model registry. If this is false, right, it won't register a model to model registry at all. So now let's consider that we have a first version of a model, right? Perfect. So now comes the first step in a workflow here, building. So consider that I have a first version of a machine learning model. Let's say you want to Dockerize this model. Okay, then you want to go ahead and deploy this to your production. So the same step, we don't just go ahead and directly deploy to the production. So once you have a first version of a model, first we go ahead and deploy to the dev environment, and you do further testing here. And if your model is satisfied, if your testing is okay, then you go ahead and deploy the same version of a model to the production. So now comes your final end users could able to start using it, right? So that's how it's going to work. Isn't it awesome? Perfect. So here we are talking about something called machine learning operations, right? But how it's going to be different when we're talking about LLMs operations or maybe Gen AI operations? There's nothing much difference. So MLOps is an extension. So MLOps is the same strategy that we use in order to deliver a large language models or Gen AI models. But sometimes we call it as LLM ops pipelines. So consider that you want to deliver any kind of a large language models to the production. Maybe consider that you want to deliver llama models, Hugging Face models, or AI 21 labs, or Claude, any kind of a large language models. So what you have first is ML ops, right? So the orchestration is going to be exactly same. The first step in a workflow is data pre-processing and versioning. So we do understand the importance of versioning a data. So then comes fine-tuning your large language models. Maybe your organization want to fine-tune an existing large language model with your own data. So what happens once you fine tune your large language model? You'd be producing your own version of your model. Let's say I'm taking a llama model from Meta. Let's say I'm fine tuning it, right? So I would be producing my own version of my llama model. Let's say I would say llama Citron version 1. So I would be using model artifacts, or maybe let's say what I'm talking about, model registries. It can be MLflow or something on AWS SageMaker or Azure ML Studio or maybe GCP. I would be using the same model registries to go ahead and version my large language models or Gen AI models over there. So then comes again, I would be going ahead and building an automation to grab the latest version of a large language model. Then I go ahead and deploy it to the on my own infrastructure, maybe on a GPUs, maybe you need an H100 GPU or etc. on a specific machine. So we do have MLOps here. So everything that we discussed is MLOps, right? So starting from data. So 1 second. So starting from your data till the deployment that we're talking about, right? This part. But so we do have a new things when we're talking about large language models or Gen AI. We are talking about something called prompt engineering, predictions, and responsible AI. right? We know what is prompt engineering. So prompt is a kind of an input that you provide a desired, I mean, so let's say in order you'd be providing a structured prompt in order to get the desired output from your large language models at Gen AI. So then comes a responsible AI also plays very important role here. So here comes your customers, right? So this is where your customer go ahead and inputs a prompt as data, right, as a question to your large language model. So he would be inputting it and he would be out getting an output answer. So but where, how comes responsible AI plays very important role, right? Let's go to the black screen and let's try to understand. So consider that here we have a Gen AI model. It can be any kind of a Gen AI model. Image to, I mean, text to text to text. It can be image to, I mean, text to image or text to video, etc. Any kind of a Gen AI models that we're talking about. So Gen AI models, which is always designed to generate a new content. So here comes the input prompt from your customer and the output from your Gen AI model. And let's try to imagine the world without responsible AI. So what happens? You know that generative AI is made for generating a new content. And again, this content can be offensive content too, right? So yes, your user could able to ask your Gen AI models to generate an offensive content, right? Offensive pictures, right? Or your Gen AI model could able to generate an offensive content too, right? So obviously we heard a lot of stories, right? So how Gemini models has become more racist, right? How it is describing different peoples. I'm talking about the presidents of different country, the prime minister of different country. We have heard all those news. So consider that this is where responsible AI comes into the picture. So let's say I would be having a responsible AI between my customer. So here comes my customer would be inputting the prompt, right? And this responsible AI will act as a filter. So this responsible AI will filter, analyze the user's input, and it will try to filter. Let's say if a user is trying to generate any offensive content, offensive pictures, so responsible AI try to filters it, and it will throw a response saying that we cannot assist you with this particular request, right? We can't assist you with that particular input. Or in the same way, consider that your Gen AI model, which has generated any offensive content, this responsible AI filters the content from Gen AI and it will throw you the filtered response to an actual user. So responsible AI plays very important role in order to develop a responsible innovation, right, by using an AI here, right? That's what exactly responsible AI will be also taking a look in this particular program. Saying that, so the kind of a CI/CD tools that we will be covering in this particular program. So we do cover the complete DevOps tools, not on one cloud, on all the clouds. So we'll be covering AWS DevOps tools like AWS code pipelines, code build, code commit. And let's say when you're talking about Azure, we'll be covering the complete Azure DevOps suite to get started with MLOps. It's like starting from Azure pipelines, repos, test plans, boards, etc. So not limited to just AWS and Azure. We'll be also getting started with Google Cloud, understanding how to get started with cloud build, cloud deploy, cloud run, etc. So not limited to the cloud. We do also cover open source tools like getting started with GitHub Actions, or maybe getting started with open source tools like Jenkins for CI/CD. So obviously then comes Dockers and Kubernetes. Obviously there is no world without Dockers and Kubernetes. Otherwise there's no organizations without Dockers and Kubernetes. So we'll be getting started with Dockers and Kubernetes from scratch. The Dockers and Kubernetes that is needed for you to work as an MLOps engineer. So we'll be getting started with a cloud-based Kubernetes clusters, learning how to create a production clusters. It can be Amazon Elastic Kubernetes service, Azure Kubernetes services, are Google Kubernetes engine, right? We'll be getting started from scratch. And then comes the open source tools that we will be covering throughout this particular program. In terms of versioning a data, we'll be getting started with the DVC, Git large files. And we just discussed about the importance of feature stores, right? So this is where we'll be getting started with Feast, working with workflow orchestration tools. We'll be getting started with Kubeflow, Apache Airflow, and we'll be exploring other open source tools like ZenML, Metaflow, MLRun, even including Argo CD. So followed by Kedro and CML2. So then comes, we talked about importance of model registry. We'll be getting started from scratch, understanding how MLflow works. So then comes, as part of infrastructure as a code, we'll be also covering the Terraform. And then comes as an open source model monitoring tools, we'll be covering evidently AI, the most powerful tool that's outside in the market for model monitoring. So then comes on the cloud platforms that we'll be focusing on. I mean, so where we will be building this level 4 architecture projects. So we'll be covering on top of AWS, we'll be covering Amazon SageMaker Studio. On top of Azure, we'll be getting started with Azure Machine Learning Workspaces. Or when it comes to GCP, we'll be getting started with Vertex AI with hands-on projects on all the clouds. So including, we'll be exploring the model and infrastructure monitoring tools on various clouds, specifically the SDKs that is offered by AWS SageMaker or Azure ML or maybe Vertex AI. So followed by that, so this program is not just limited to the cloud platforms or open source tools. We will be also exploring the commercial tools. Obviously, the commercial tools are like Mano tools, but we would like to also give you an idea of that. So we'll be also exploring the commercial tools like Olahai, Domino Data Labs, or Weights and Biases, Databricks, or etc. Right. So then comes the post deployment challenges. Here we go. The post deployment of a models. Obviously, we thought so. Now we have deployed the models to the production. Okay, so now we will go ahead and have a coffee or a drink. No, not exactly. So the post deployment challenges, the actual challenge for any organization starts once you deploy the model to the production. So let's say we can categorize that into software engineering related challenges or ML related challenges. Our challenges when you're going to deploy your machine learning models to the edge devices like IoT devices or to your mobile phones, etc. Right. So we'll be also diving deep in understanding the post deployment challenges, the tools that you use, how do you address the latency, the scalability, etc. So saying that, so now we heard a lot. We do understand so what it takes to master MLOps, right? The kind of a tools, the technology, the cloud that you need to learn. Isn't it fun? I mean, isn't it? It would be a fun that we go ahead and take a look on an actual end-to-end pipeline that I've built on top of AWS already. Let me just show you how does this automation is going to look like. So please make sure you stay till end of this particular program to enjoy an awesome demo and to hear more about our program and where you can also download the free ebooks. Okay, just make sure we do have 30 more minutes. So please make sure you stay till end of this particular program. Okay, so now let's go to the next slide. Obviously, let's have some live demo. So I have already built an end-to-end ML pipeline. What I'm talking about is level 4 architecture on top of AWS cloud already. So I have built an end-to-end ML pipeline on top of AWS. So now I'm going to show you that. Here we go. So I believe you could able to see my screen here. So currently I'm in Amazon SageMaker Studio. So you will be learning how to build this end-to-end ML pipelines on top of AWS along with me during our live sessions. So here is a demo where I have built this end-to-end ML pipelines already. And so let's say when we're talking about building this level 4 architecture project, right, it takes at least 6 to 8 hours to build. Just imagine when we're talking about MLOps, it's a collaboration between multiple peoples. So the level 4 projects are the perfect projects that, let's say, consider that you might be a 15 years experience candidate or maybe 20 years of experience candidate, or you want to get started with an MLOps engineer as a role. Level 4 architecture projects are a perfect projects to be put it on your resume, right? So that actually sellable story, I would say, right? So that's the story that's going to win, especially when you're going to discuss in an interview. Okay, so obviously, let me just show you this complex architecture that we have implemented here. Okay, so this is the architecture that we have implemented in order to build this end-to-end ML pipelines. So in order to implement this complete pipeline in our program, it takes at least 1 weekend. So we'll be starting from Saturday, we'll be ending on Sunday, right? So obviously I have implemented this particular architecture. So I'm an Amazon SageMaker Studio is a complete end-to-end machine learning platform where any organizations can able to deliver any kind of a models to the production and they can build any kind of a models here. So here I will be going to my projects that I do have already. I have built the project called MLOps test demo. Let me just go inside this particular project. So here is where you can able to see my pipelines. I'm talking about this pipelines, which is a complete automated pipelines. I have a one pipeline. I call it as MLOps test demo. Let me just go inside that. And here you can able to see something called executions, right? So what is this executions that you can able to see here, right? So I can see a lot of people has done a lot of things here. So yeah, so let me just try to clear that for my side. So clear all the drawings. I know that you're good at making drawings, but let me just make some drawings here. Okay, here you can able to see the first execution here. So what is this execution is all about, right? So consider that if you when I'm talking about this level 4 architecture project, it is called automated retraining pipelines. So when this pipeline execute once, you have one version of a model. If this pipeline executes again, it produces second version of a model. If this pipeline executes again, it produces version 3 of a model. So now you could able to see I have one execution. That means I have one version of a model. So this model is already, this pipeline is already executed. That means I have one version of a model. So first, let's try to understand. So what kind of a model I have built already? What kind of a problem that I actually solved, right? So the kind of a model that I've built, it's basically in order to predict an age of an abalone. So let me just go to the internet. So probably in case if you're a non-vegetarian, if you like to eat a seafood, so this is how the abalone looks like. So the kind of a problem that we are solving here, we are actually trying to predict an age of an abalone. So which I'm trying to, let's say, predicting an age of an abalone is a pretty much tedious process without AI. So they would be using a microscopes, and there are kind of a ring formations on these abalones. So abalone is a kind of a sea snail. It's a snail, and where you have a meat in it, something like this. So where the meat is an edible thing, and we are predicting an age of an abalone. And so that's where I have built this end-to-end ML pipelines that you could able to see on my SageMaker console here. So I have executed this pipeline once. Let's go ahead and take a look inside it. So now I believe you could able to see my screen here. Okay, so perfect. So you could able to see my screen. This is how my pipeline looks like. So let me just so go back. Just give me a sec. Yeah, so you can able to see this graph. So what we calling it as an orchestration, basically. So this is what we're calling it as an orchestration. So these are the different steps. These are the different workflows that I do have in order to build this model. The first step in my workflow is basically what I'm talking about, data pre-processing step. So what do we do in a data pre-processing step? This is where your raw data comes into the picture. We split this data into, let's say, a training data and test data set. Basically that's what exactly you can able to see here. So once my training data is available, so then the next step, this is my first step, which runs automatically. Then it goes to the second step. It grabs the training data. It will start teaching the data to a machine. So, and once my model training job is completed, so this is where the next step in a workflow. So the next step in a workflow would be a model evaluation step. So what we do in a model evaluation step. So in a model training step, I would be having a machine learning model. Let's say consider that I do have a pickle file, right? A packed model. So I would be taking this machine learning model, and I would be taking a test data, and I would be evaluating a machine learning model. So this is where I calculate the metrics, my MSC score. Let's assume that my MSC score is 4.5, right? That's my MSC score for an example. So then comes the next step in my workflow, is basically, let's say, a model evaluation step. So as I mentioned, in a model evaluation step, we already calculated a metrics. Then comes the next step in a workflow would be a quality gate. I did mention about a quality gate. So a quality gate is simply a condition. I'm just actually checking whether model that we have trained, the metrics, let's say the metrics is MSC is basically a 4.5. And here in a quality gate, I have my benchmark that I configured. The benchmark is 7. That means if my MSC score is less than or equal to 7, if it is true, right, this model go ahead and registers to the model registry. Otherwise, it will not. So consider that, let's say my MSC score is 4.5. The 4.5 is less than or equal to 7. Obviously, the condition is true. That means so model will get deployed to my model will get registered to a model registry. So that's what exactly you can see over here. The next step in a workflow, so where your model get registered to a model registry. And this is the automated workflow. I don't run the code here. Everything runs automatically, right? So obviously, if I go to my data pre-processing step, you can able to see ultimately what I've done here. I have taken my raw data, and I have transformed my raw data into test data, validation data, and training data set, basically, right? So followed by that, so then comes once the model is registered to a model registry, the model will be available in a model registry. Like I did mention about MLflow, which is a very famous model registry that's outside in the market. But when we're talking about AWS has got its own model registry. Let's go ahead and take a look whether this model got registered under a model registry or not. So to do that, I need to go to the left side navigation panel. You can see there is something called models. If I go to my models, this is where you can able to see a model group. You can see I have various different model groups. This is the latest model group that I do have. If I go ahead and expand that, you can see I have a first version of a model where this model is not yet deployed to the production. So obviously we did discussed about the importance of, so once I have a model, I don't just go ahead and register I don't go ahead and deploy this model to the production. Instead, I will be having an approval stage. Maybe I want my senior folks in my organization, maybe a senior data scientist or maybe a senior MLOps engineer, they need to take an action to decide whether it's the best model, can we go ahead and deploy to the production. So they go to the model registry and they go to the first version of a model. So they can go ahead and check all the training metrics, the metrics they have evaluated at the time of training their machine learning models, how their RMSE score looks like, and validation and testing, how does their evaluation look like, and they finally go ahead and decide so whether they want to deploy this model to the production or not. So when it comes to the model deployment step, so this is where you can go ahead and either approve this model. Once you approve this model, this go ahead and deploys this to the production. Or if you don't like this model, if your metrics is not up to the mark, you can simply go ahead and reject this model. That means the model won't be deployed to the production. So here we are interested to approve it. So let's go ahead and click on this approval button. So here I would say all test okay, or maybe you can just give the detailed description, and I can simply go ahead and hit save button. So now the changes has been saved. That means you should able to notice after some time, after a few minutes, you should able to see this model will get started deploying this to the production. So once the model is getting deployed to the production, under deployment section, you can able to notice there is something called endpoints. So endpoints. So what do you mean by endpoints? So I did discuss about various different methods to deploy the model to the production. You can deploy the model to the real-time endpoint. That's what exactly I'm trying to do. That means it's a low latency endpoint. That means you can able to invoke the model in a few milliseconds. That means you get the predictions in a few milliseconds. So, or you can deploy the model to the batch, Dockers, Kubernetes, etc. So here I'm just showing you a demo on how I'm deploying the model to the real-time endpoint. It's going to take some time for the model to get deployed here in order to get reflected. So what we will do, we'll come back later and we'll check what's happening with the deployment step of our model. Okay. So now we'll go back to our slide. Let's discuss the third important thing that we need to discuss in this particular program. So how does the career opportunities looks like in MLOps? Okay, so please go ahead and ask questions in the chat window. I'm going to answer all the questions, and I'm also going to unmute your mics and we can also have a deep conversation here. Okay, so here comes the very important part, how you can position. So consider that you might be coming from a DevOps background, data engineering background, data science background. You might be a senior IT manager. How do you position yourself into AI industry? So how MLOps can be the perfect fit for you, right? So let's get started. The career opportunities in MLOps. So when I'm talking about, let's say, MLOps, so who will be part of MLOps? Who should learn MLOps, for an example, right? So you can be a data scientist. So consider that most of the data scientists today, they are really good at building models because they are the one who will be building the models, right? As an MLOps engineer, you don't build the models. You don't write the expertized Python programming. There's no need for you to have an expertise in data science, learning algorithm statistics, right? So data scientist is someone who does that. But today, the data scientist is really good at building models. But if they want to productionize this model to the production, and if they want to deploy these models, build an automation around it, yeah, so data scientists are really lagging in that. So if you're a data scientist, MLOps is for you. You are a data engineer or a data analyst who's trying to migrate to the futuristic technology and where you can able to position yourself into AI. So data engineers and data analysts and MLOps is for you. Or you might be a researcher, applied scientist. You might be an existing ML engineer, or you might be a DevOps engineer who would like to transform into MLOps. MLOps is for you. So obviously, when we're talking about DevOps engineers, they already come with some relevant experience. They do understand the software delivery. right, to build an automation to deliver a software. So that comes an added advantage. You already understand how CI/CD, the source versioning, works, right? So that could be an added advantage when you're applying for interviews, you can demonstrate that experience. You might be an aspiring MLOps professional and enthusiast. You might be a machine learning professional who want to learn how to deploy the models to the production. Or you might be someone who is already into Azure, GCP, or you might be a solution architect, cloud engineer, or you have a knowledge on Docker and Kubernetes, or you are someone who is going to you want to learn DVC, Feast, or ML Flow. MLOps is for you. Or it can be any software professional or any individual who have an interest in data and AI. So today, any software professional with minimal prerequisites, they can get started with MLOps. MLOps engineers, they don't build models. Usually it's a one question they ask, okay. And MLOps engineers, it's not a full-time programming kind of a stuff. It's when we're talking about MLOps, you'd be mostly working on a tool base. That doesn't mean that I never say that with zero programming knowledge you can become an MLOps engineer. You need to have a minimal of Python basics, not an expertise. So consider that if a data scientist comes and asks me a question, Sharat, okay, I'm a data scientist, I want to take this MLOps program, do I need to have an expertise in Python? I would say yes. You are a data scientist, almost every day you would be working with Python, you need to have an expertise. But as an MLOps engineer, you don't need an expertise like data scientist. You just need to have some basic idea of any programming language. At least a Python would really work. But let's see why MLOps could be the best interesting career that you can have in your life. Because so consider that we are talking about AI today. We are talking about different kind of an AI. It can be a delivering a classical machine learning models or Gen AI models today. So we will be talking about AI for the next 10 years, next 20 years, or the next 100 years. There's no doubt about it, right? So today we are talking about large language models or Gen AI models. Maybe after 2 years, we might be talking about AGIs, right? So artificial general intelligence. And maybe after that, we might be talking about artificial super intelligence. It can be any kind of an AI. There comes an organization needs an operational professional who we call it as an MLOps engineers to deliver any kind of an AI to the production. So obviously today what's happening, so maybe you might be someone who want to break free from the stagnation, right? So consider that today AI is being part of your own job. So today I can use let's say GitHub Copilot or Amazon Q, which can completely do the job of a developer, right? I can just go ahead and give a task to Amazon Q or maybe GitHub Copilot, which can develop a complete software by itself. It can do development, testing, review a software, right? So but the logic here, so I did ask you a question. So do you want to be a creator of an AI or do you want to be a consumer of an AI? So have you need to be a creator of an AI. That means you would be a top notch of an industry. So you can be a top 1% of this industry, because so AI jobs are the high paid jobs today in the industry. There's no doubt about it, because there's a buzz. When there is a buzz, there's a lot of investment. That means there's a lot of jobs. A lot of organizations would be hiring them, right? So AI jobs are a top notch and high paid jobs today in the industry. And that's how it's going to look like for the next 100 years. So do you want to rule this world? That means you need to learn AI. Or you want to, you want to rule this world completely, you need to be a creator of an AI. Or you want to just go along with this world, that means you need to be a consumer of an AI at least, right? So saying that, so are you someone stagnated with a boring job where you never see any growth and you want to have a fun every day? AI is the right position for you, and MLOps can be the right position. See, consider that, saying apart, so consider that, let's get into the very serious talk here. So consider that you might be having a 2 years of experience. You might be coming from some software development background, DevOps, data engineer. So any software professional can able to become an MLOps engineer. So consider that you might be coming from more than 6 or 8 plus years of experience. You can position yourself into lead positions in MLOps, like MLOps lead, architect, or specialist kind of a roles, right? And we do also help you in position yourself. It's a different ball game. We'll discuss that. So let's talk about some numbers. Let's get into the interesting numbers, isn't it? Without a numbers, the life is not interesting. So let's say when we are talking about an average salary for someone who is working as an MLOps engineers, right? So let's say we are talking about a global standard. It can be in US, it's around $165,000 per annum. That's a huge number. But let's now talk about India. So I'm talking about someone who has a 2 to 3 years of experience. So I'm talking about in terms of an MNC standards. This data has been gathered from sixfigure.com, but you can just go ahead and cross verify by yourself. So an average salary for some MLOps engineers, someone who has a 2 to 3 years of experience, would be around 35 lakhs per annum, obviously. So obviously that comes in different salary brackets. So consider that most amount of the peoples, they would be lying between this 10 to 20 lakhs. Maybe they're not coming from, let's say, the relevant background. Like maybe it can be a beginners, for an example. Let's say you might be lying between 20 to 30 lakhs, where you'd be coming near to the average. And maybe let's say consider that you might be applying for let's say MLOps engineering job roles where you have more than 2 to 3 years of experience. Let's say a lead kind of a positions that you're looking forward, where you can expect the salary bracket greater than 50 lakhs per annum. So this is statistics, right? This is data from internet. But what if I tell you my own real data? I'm talking about what my participants are going to get, what have they are getting, right? So we do have peoples who is working as an MLOps engineers who are getting more than 20-25 lakhs, and we do have lead peoples who is working in MLOps, let's say MLOps lead, MLOps engineer. So they are getting a more than 100% hike. We do have people who is working as an MLOps engineer, MLOps lead, who is getting more than 60 lakhs per annum too. I would recommend you to check the testimonials to know an actual figure of what's the reality is basically. So our testimonials is the best part for that. So obviously when I'm talking about the AI job vacancy or ML job vacancies, there's no doubt about it, it's going to be skyrocketed for a one good reason, because AI is trying to be integrated in almost all the organizations. Consider that you might be a software developer. AI can be useful for you to develop a code, test a code. So consider that you might be an organization. So let's say who is into e-commerce, you can be working in a space sector, an agriculture sector. AI can be everywhere. So consider that if an AI is trying to be part of every part of this particular world, I mean, let's say there might be some person who would be working behind it to deliver this AI to the production, right? So that's where MLOps really comes into the picture. But here I would like to display this particular picture just to understand the seriousness of what's really happening in this AI world, right? See, consider that. I want you to turn around by yourself. I mean, just try to wonder. Tell me when, I mean, just let's say you might be coming from DevOps, software testing background, software engineering background. Just imagine whatever the background that you're coming from, right? Tell me when is the time that you heard about the breakthrough innovation that happened in your own industry? So the new tool that you heard, which might be transforming a DevOps industry, the new tool that you heard that is transforming a testing industry, the new tool that you heard that is transforming any part of your industry. Probably you might be hearing less, but you hear more about AI today. Each and every week there is a new update from OpenAI. Each and every week there is a new update from all these cloud platforms, right? Update, all those updates are around AI. So consider that comparing with any kind of an industry, AI is transforming pretty much faster than any other industry, right? So consider that, let's say we'll talk about this simple example. How does this drones has replaced a complete, yeah, I mean, this choppers and a cameraman, for an example, right? So the world before drones, it can be a news reporters, it can be a movie makers would be carrying I mean, the camera, or maybe a choppers to shoot a movie or maybe a video. This complete industry got just replaced in just 10 years. 10 years is a pretty much long, but when we're talking about AI, you don't have much of a time, right? So AI is transforming pretty much faster, and whether you want to be a creator of an AI or you want to be you want to be a user of that AI, you need to move pretty much faster. Otherwise, you would be missing your piece of cake there. As simple as that. Okay, saying that, now let us discuss about the actual program. Okay, so the MLOps specialization program, as we discussed, we are starting from February 22nd. We do have very few seats and very few days left. So let's try to discuss what's the interesting thing that we put it over here. Okay, so this program will be starting from February 22nd. We are talking about it's a 12 weekends program. Otherwise, we are talking about it's a 3 months program. So consider that. Let's say you would be joining from India. Let's say the timing would be 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. IST. That means we would be having a live sessions every weekend. So you would be joining the live sessions between 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. That is 4 hours Saturday, 4 hours Sunday. So consider you might be joining from EST time zone. So your time will be 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And let's say you're from CET time zone, 2:30 to 6:30. So here and there, the time zone might vary, but it would match almost all the time zones. So let's try to understand the program workflow, right? So let's get started. So every weekend we'll be having a live sessions, the live hands-on sessions. So what do you mean by that? So we'll be building more than 28 real-time, I mean, around 28 real-time projects throughout this program. All these projects you'd be building along with me. So whatever I do on my screen, parallelly you'll be building it on your screen. That's how it's going to work. So our live sessions are between 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. IST. Every Monday, you'll be receiving an access to the recordings of a live session. And even on weekdays, we do have a program, but it is optional to attend. We call it as debugging sessions. So what do you mean by debugging sessions? So MLOps Specialization program, as a name represents, it's a program which helps you to become a specialist in MLOps. It's a specialist level program. It really works for the people who have more than 15 plus years of experience, someone who want to position yourself into lead positions in MLOps here. So when it comes to such kind of a program, we would be building a such kind of a projects. As I mentioned, the level 4 architecture projects, which takes a longer time for us to build. There are a lot of different components in that. So consider that you have some bugs or errors. You couldn't able to resolve it during the live sessions. You'd be joining the debugging sessions. So there are two different kinds of debugging sessions here. A scheduled debugging sessions and unscheduled debugging sessions. At least 2 to 3 debugging sessions we'll be conducting. All these debugging sessions will be starting around 7 p.m. IST, which is called scheduled debugging sessions. And then comes an unscheduled debugging sessions are according to your time convenience. Maybe consider that it's a 9 p.m. IST here, right, in India. So consider that you might be available right now. So you just want to connect, you have some doubts and bugs. So based on a mutual understanding between a trainer and you, we'll be connecting on your own time convenience. That's how our debugging session is going to work. So let's get some complete overview of our MLOps specialization program. So it's a program where we cover MLOps and DevOps on multiple clouds, AWS, Azure, GCP, including open source tools. It's an 100 hours of live sessions. There are more than 50 plus hands-on labs, and there are 28 real-time projects. When I'm talking about this 28 real-time projects, belongs to this level 1, 2, 3, and level 4 architecture projects that we'll be building. So apart from this 28 real-time projects, 19 to 20 real-time projects that you will be building it during the live sessions itself. So we do have assignments, so where you will be doing a further practicing, etc. And there will be one-on-one debugging sessions. See, this debugging sessions is where you get more personal time, where you can bug me for as much as long you want. You can ask truckloads of questions as much as you want, right? So that's how the debugging session is going to work. It's a one-on-one. You can share your screen where I can assist you to fix the problem. That's how it's going to work. Okay, it's an interesting thing. So now let's quickly go ahead and discuss about the pricing structure that we got. So obviously we have the best pricing structure and an interesting pricing structure that we got here. So consider that. Before we discuss about the pricing structure, let's try to understand the categories of people who take our program. So almost 100% of our people who take our programs are working professionals, basically. And again, all you folks who attends this particular program, you don't just take this particular program just for upskilling here. You're looking for more than that. You need more than that here. You need a personal care here. So we have designed this particular program accordingly. Okay, consider that you're a person, someone who is only interested in upskilling. So consider that you want to attend live sessions every weekend. You want to attend this debugging sessions. You want to get access to the recordings. So then you can go for our basic plan, which we call it as basic plan. So basic plan would be starting around just 42,999. Just imagine it's a 3 months program, and let's say more than 20 hours of debugging sessions with a personal care. So let's say we are talking about a basic plan, which would be starting from 42,999. And what you get in that, as I mentioned, you can attend live sessions, access to the recordings and debugging sessions, some free resources and other things. But consider that you're looking for more personal care here. I'm talking about you're looking for some premium support. So what do you mean by that? This program is designed not just for upskilling only. More than that, as I mentioned, you can go for our advanced plan, which is costing 45,999 with just a 3,000 rupees more than basic plan. Let's try to understand what's a great deal here. Just in 3,000 rupees upgrade, so you'd be getting more than what you need. So consider that you can still attend live sessions, access to the recordings and debugging sessions, and you get some premium support here. So you will be getting a 6 months of technical job support with resume preparation, and then comes bonus reattendance opportunity. Let me just help you to understand each and everything here. So what is this bonus reattendance opportunity? See, as I mentioned, 100% of people who take our program are working professionals, and you put in your time and investment here. Everyone would like to take an 100% of value, the great value from this program, isn't it? Definitely, right? So how do we make sure from our side you can take an 100% value from this program? This is where the bonus reattendance opportunity comes into the picture. So bonus reattendance opportunity is nothing but you sign up once, you take our program twice. So consider that you're signing up for a February batch. Even after you completing the February batch, you'll be given another one more chance to take our July batch again for free of cost. There is no need for further registration. You will be automatically added to the next batch. So we make sure that in case, let's say, consider that you have some, let's say, busy work, so maybe you have missed few weekends live session, so you get another chance to retake the live session again in the next batch. The great deal, just in 3,000 rupees. But here comes another advantage. In every new batch that we conduct, we always update our curriculum. So maybe you get another chance to learn the new curriculum, right? That's how it's going to work. And now let's talk about a resume preparation and technical job support, where an actual deal comes into the picture. So this is where we are really expert at. So consider that this is a three-step approach, what we're talking about. So what is this three-step approach, right? So consider that most of you folks, let's say once you're done with upskilling, obviously you want to transform, right? You don't want to take a much of a 3 months or 6 months to do that. You want to do it faster. So how do we do this fast track transformation help? So it's a three-step approach. The first, second, and third. So the first step is basically a resume preparation. So what do we do in a resume preparation? So consider that you might be a person coming from DevOps engineering background. So how does your resume should look like when you are applying for MLOps engineering job role? So you might be a data engineer, you might be a data scientist, you might be a Gen AI engineer, right? Or you might be a software tester, right? So our cloud engineer. So how do you portray your resume accordingly? If someone checks it, it should definitely say you are an MLOps engineer, right? So maybe you have already 8 years of experience or 14 years of experience. So what kind of a positions you can able to target? So how, what kind of a keywords that you need to have, what kind of a project description that you need to have, right? So we make sure that we help you in optimizing that. Second step is basically helping you in optimizing your job portals. Basically, let's say we are talking about it can be helping in optimizing your LinkedIn, Naukri, Indeed, Glassdoor, any job portal that you do have in your country, for an example. So in order to make sure that you're getting some good quality calls, so here is a approach. When you have a good resume and good job portals with the good keywords, no one is going to stop you from getting a good calls from the organization. So you get a call, right? A call for an interview. When you're getting a call, that doesn't mean that, so for an example, you could able to clear an interview, right? So consider that. So what's the story that you're going to mention? What's the story that you're going to discuss in an actual interview? So this is where the third step, the most important step, what we call it as JD decoding session comes into the picture. So this is where we are really good at. So what is this JD decoding session? Let's assume that day after tomorrow you have an interview. Maybe you have a first round of a technical round of an interview, but you have a JD. So before you going ahead and sitting for an actual technical round of an interview, you will be bringing a JD and we will be sitting for an actual technical round of an interview. So consider that maybe an organization is looking for AWS as well as Azure. Maybe they're looking for other open source tools like Docker, Kubernetes, MLflow. So that's how the JD looks like, for an example, right? So we analyze this JD and we try to understand what kind of a questions they're going to ask, what kind of a cloud platforms they are majorly using, and we help you in providing this deep insights, right? And more than that, there's a one common question in any interview that you're going to attend. So mostly the 50% of questions they would be asking from their whatever the resume that you do have, and next 50% they might be asking from the job requirements they're looking forward, right? So how are you going to mention your own story? They're going to ask you a question. Tell me, what have you done in your previous organization in terms of MLOps? What's your contribution? What's your daily job look like? So what's the story that you're going to mention? The story that can able to win, right? We help you in making you that story. Basically, we narrate you that story. We help you in answering a counter questions, a scenario based questions, right? We help you in feeding that complete idea of how you handle that particular interview round, for an example, right? And this helps you in feeding an enough clarity and confidence to clear that technical round of an interview. So this is what exactly you get in 6 months of technical job support. But you can also use this 6 months of technical job support in another way. Consider that you're already in a job, but consider that you're stuck somewhere. You need some assistance. Maybe you need some documentation. You need some sample code. You need some brainstorming. Consider that you might be working in a lead architect position. You're drafting an architecture, but you need to verify whether it's a scalable architecture. You might be needing some inputs. We can sit for a discussion as part of 6 months of technical job support. And here comes our topmost plan, what we call it as advanced
Plus plan, which will be costing around 51,999. It's a 6,000 rupees more than our advanced plan. But what's the difference? Instead of you getting a 6 month support, here you get 1 year complete support from us. And again, a bonus reattendance opportunity. And more than that, you get an instant access to the recordings. So what do you mean by instant access to recordings? Okay, here we go. Our program is a 3 months long. You don't need to wait for 3 months long. Maybe you want to get started immediately. Maybe let's say consider you're going to sign up now. You want to just get started in next 24 hours. Yes. So what we do, we give an access to our previous batch recordings. I mean, we done with our previous batch last 2 weekends ago. You can access our recordings of a previous batch in next 24 hours. You can get started with any topic, any module that you want. Parallelly, you can start accessing our live sessions for the next 2 batches, right? It's a fast track, and this is what exactly our advanced plus plan is. And let's say you want to check the pricing in USD. So this is how our pricing is going to look like. Our basic plan would be starting from just $624, and our advanced plan would be starting from $674, and our topmost plan would be starting from $774. Okay, here we go. So that's it. And here comes the awesome announcement. Okay, so here we go. We are in the final part of a session where I'm going to open the session for Q&A. I'm going to discuss about the awesome curriculum that we do have here. So we are very much proud to say this is the best, the MLOps program that's outside in the market, with the kind of a curriculum, the projects, the support that we are offering here. We have carefully narrated that, and our success already talks about that. And obviously, for the folks who made this particular demo session till this end, here comes an awesome announcement, a surprise. This is only for the people who stay till end of this particular program. They will be coming to know that. So obviously, there are surprises. So we are almost closing our registration. This is almost our third demo session that we are conducting. We do have very less seats. I mean, we do have just 3 seats left, not much. I'm really sorry about that. So we do have just 3 seats left. So we are running some let's say the last minute offers. So we are giving 3 different offers here. This offers will be valid till 10th of February. So that means you have enough time to discuss, call me, bug me, and resolve your doubts and concerns. Then you can take an action, definitely, right? So the first offer is called a free upgradation offer. So consider that most of you folks would be interested in getting either advanced or maybe advanced plus plan, because you need to secure yourself. I mean, you don't want to miss anything from this program. You get twice the chance to take a live sessions and 6 months of support, right? Or maybe you're looking for getting started immediately, where you can get 1 year of support, or maybe let's say get started with instant access to the recordings. So consider that. If you're a person, someone who's looking for advanced plan, don't register for that. Yes, I say don't register for that. All you need to do, you need to go ahead and register for a basic plan, which is costing 42,999, and we will be upgrading you for free to advanced plan. That means you register for basic, but you get advanced, and you can save around 3,000 rupees on a registration. And we do have an EMI options on your credit cards majorly, and few debit cards too, and where you can opt for the EMI options. That means you can start opting for EMI options from 3 months to maximum 24 months you need. Followed by that, are you a person, someone who's looking for topmost plan, which is advanced plus plan, which is costing 51,999? Don't register for that. Simply go ahead and register for advanced plan, which is costing 45,999, but we will be upgrading you to the topmost plan. That means you get access to the recordings just post completion of this meeting, and you can get started immediately with the support from us as a trainer. Okay, so this is our offer number 1. Then comes the offer number 2 and offer number 3, right? So we're just giving not just 1, 3 offers. Just we are closing our registration. So one is a no cost EMI offer and the price cut discounted offer. So let's get started. Let's try to understand. So consider that you're not interested in free upgradation that we are providing. Let's say you want some price cut. We can able to give you a maximum of 5% off on basic and advanced plus, where we can offer a maximum of 10% off. That means your price will be scaling down from 52,999 to, let's say, price will be scaling down to 47,699 only. And similar for advanced plan, you'll be scaling down to 43,700, or for a basic plan just 40,850. So you can get the discounted price cut. You don't want to pay 43,999, just pay 40,000, and you can get started with our basic plan. Obviously, you cannot climb both the offers together. Either you can take a free upgradation, or option number 2, the price cut offer, or the best option could be the option number 3, the no cost EMI offer. So we can give you a maximum of 3 months no cost EMI on a basic plan, and for advanced and advanced plus, then we can give you a maximum of 6 months no cost EMI. That means if you're going for an EMI option,
don't pay the interest. We will be behalf of you, we would be managing this particular interest. Simple. So when you are making a payment, your bank would be cutting an interest from our amount, and you won't be paying any interest. You can split your entire EMI option for the next 6 months. That means you can peacefully on get started with this particular program, right? So these are the three different offers, and but the problem is we do have just 3 seats left, because we are almost closing our registrations. And obviously you have enough time to take a decision, each of every person here. So please take a decision by taking a look into our testimonials. Our testimonials are hardly 5 to 8 minutes long. So go ahead and listen to the success stories of our people's, the offers they got. So they talk the success of our particular program. More than that is a support what they're really interested in after upskilling this particular program, basically. So here is a story that I would like to mention. So before I open the session for Q&A, okay. So consider that most of you folks might be coming from an IT, right? So we do have a very proud testimonials. We do have peoples working in a lead positions. For an example, I can share the story of a person called Sandeep. He's a senior data scientist. You know, an average salary for senior data scientist would be somewhere around 30 lakhs in India. But he's really good at building models, but he has no idea in delivering a models, building an end-to-end ML pipelines. He did take our program, and he did crack the job, and now he is working on let's say the lead MLOps position, and carefully he has opted for the role. He is taking care of both MLOps plus data science. He got an 100% hike. That's awesome, right? So obviously I'm really proud of Sandeep testimonials, but more proud than Sandeep's testimonial is basically what I'm talking about, a Deepali's testimonial. These testimonials are already part of a PDF. I'm going to share it. So what is Deepali's story here? Let's say Deepali is not coming from an IT background like you. She is coming from a complete mechanical engineering background. And then she did work as a mechanical engineer. Followed by that, she worked as a digital marketing engineer. But she has a dream of getting into AI as a data scientist. But she started upskilling herself, but she got a job in a startup, but not as a data scientist. She is focusing more on the deployment of her models. But the problem is she's not doing any MLOps over there. She's just managing the deployments manually. And that's where Deepali started attending our MLOps specialization program. So consider that we do have a statistics. So for an example, I would recommend you to take a look on a Harsha's testimonial, the person who is here. So after completing a program in just 45 days, he got 3 different offers in MLOps, right? 45 days. So obviously, Deepali, who is coming from a complete non-technical background, she did obviously took 2 to 3 months to crack the job. Obviously, you don't believe I might have sat with her for almost for 15 JD decoding sessions. We helped her in every step. So consider that in each and every interview, the round she attends, she calls us back, she shares a feedback, what went wrong, and we collect the feedback from there, and we give an insights. Okay, if she is losing something that she has already learned, we ask her to watch and make a notes and make the story again. And she took the interviews again and again. She could eventually get better, and she got to crack the job, right? So we are really proud of Deepali comparing with anyone else, because as you are already coming from an IT background, you can easily transition. But the proudest moment for us, if we can able to help Deepali to transform, why not you already coming from an IT background, right? So please take a look. And why Cytron Technology is the best peoples to conduct this program. This is not our first batch. I believe this could be our 14th or 15th batch that we're conducting in terms of MLOps. And so we are Cytron Technologies Private Limited. We are based out of Bangalore. We're supported by Department of Science and Technologies. We are previously incubated in PSG STEP, which is the top incubator that is available in India. And we also awarded in many international stages, the best startup award in 2018, and we are part of AWS Activate program, etc. So you can learn more about our testimonials. Please do check the PDF that I'm going to share. Then you take a decision. Okay. So without wasting much of a time, I will be going ahead and discussing the curriculum, and then I will be opening a session for a Q&A. So let's get started. Let me just go ahead. Let's discuss about the curriculum that we do have. Okay, here we go. So I will be sharing this PDF, the registration links for you folks. Okay, so you can get everything in this PDF. Let's go to our curriculum. So totally we do have 15 modules. I'm talking about 15 modules.
So the first module would be getting started with introduction to MLOps. This is where we'll be diving into the world of MLOps, understanding the different strategies, the tools that's available in the market. So we are talking about again the AI industrialization challenges, the strategies that organization makes, and obviously we're talking about MLOps, but we'll be talking about many different types of operations. What is DevOps, AI Ops, Model Ops, LLM Ops, FM Ops, or GitOps? And the most interesting thing that we're going to discuss, we'll be taking an actual companies, 5 organizations. We'll be discussing about their CI/CD production case studies, how they've implemented the strategies. Module number 2 is basically overview of ML and MLOps stages. This is where we'll be diving deep into understanding the data versioning tools, the code, model features, and container versions. Talking about different kind of testings that we conduct in MLOps, automation and CI/CD, reproducibility, deployment, and monitoring. And this is where we'll be diving into the MLOps architectures. I'm talking about, let's say if you're going to implement end-to-end ML pipelines by using open source tools like Kubeflow, Apache Airflow, ML Flow or Metaflow, Kedro, ZenML, ML Run or CML, how does that going to look like? And let's say if you want to implement a complete end-to-end automation on top of cloud platforms like AWS or Azure GCP, how does that's going to look like? For an example, an architecture that I showed you that we'll be building in our program during our live sessions. So followed by that, we'll be discussing similar kind of an architectures on a multiple clouds here. So followed by that, module number 3 is where the real hands-on starts. This is where we'll be getting started with Git essentials for MLOps practitioners. We will be getting started with Git from scratch, understanding how to work with branches, creating branches, working with merge, or maybe working with collaboration, how multiple peoples can able to work together with the same repository, working with remote repositories. We'll be getting started from scratch. Okay, here comes module number 4. This is where we will be diving into the DevOps part that you need to know before you heading towards an MLOps here. So when I'm talking about module number 4, this is where we'll be discussing about the CI/CD strategies, including AWS, Azure GCP, and GitHub Actions as well. So this is where we'll be getting started with AWS DevOps, understanding all the DevOps tools on top of AWS, and we'll be building one end-to-end DevOps project to understand how DevOps works in AWS. Similarly, we'll be covering the complete GCP DevOps, and we'll be building a one real-time project to understand how DevOps works on GCP. Then comes, we'll be getting started with Azure DevOps. We'll be covering all the Azure DevOps suite, starting from Azure boards, repos, pipelines, and we'll be working on the concept of infrastructure as a code, or the pipeline as a code on top of Azure DevOps, and building a one Azure DevOps project to understand how DevOps works there. Then comes, as part of open source tool, we will be also getting started with GitHub Actions. You'll be learning how to work with GitHub Actions to build a complete end-to-end DevOps pipelines on top of it. Then comes module number 5. This is where we'll be diving deep into Dockers and Kubernetes from scratch. The Dockers and Kubernetes that is needed for you to become an MLOps engineer. So we'll be covering Dockers from scratch, where there are multiple projects where you'll be learning how to Dockerize a software, Dockerizing a machine learning model, deploying it, are building a complete end-to-end ML models with Docker Compass. So then comes getting started with Kubernetes from scratch, understanding how Kubernetes works, how to work with production Kubernetes clusters, understanding Kubernetes resources, and getting started with building and deploying models on top of Kubernetes infrastructure. So we do have different modules for Kubernetes. Module number 6 itself, again, Kubernetes deployment strategies. Here you'll be understanding how to work with production Kubernetes clusters on top of AWS, Azure GCP. We'll be understanding how to create a production Kubernetes cluster and deploying a machine learning models on top of it. That's about module number 6. Module number 7, we'll be diving into high-level overview of model management tools. So this is where we'll be getting started with data versioning, code versioning, experiment tracking tools, model registries, and model monitoring. So module number 7 would be the tools where we'll be diving deep into the open source tools like ML Flow. There are 2 projects here. First, you'll be understanding how to deploy an ML Flow stack on a cloud. Then comes building, training, and deploying a machine learning models using ML Flow server that we have deployed. And then comes, we discussed about importance of versioning a data. As part of it, we'll be covering DVC from the scratch. You will learn how to version a data, how to push it to the cloud, and start playing with that particular data versions that you create. So module number 8, we do have a separate module for feature stores. This is where we'll be exploring a various different feature stores that is available in the market, starting from cloud, SageMaker, Vertex AI,
or Azure ML, or maybe open source tools like other open source tools like Feast, for an example. So here we'll be using open source tool like Feast in order to create what we call it as online or offline feature store, and how to serve the features and data for training and inferencing here. Okay, module number 9 is the most important module. This is where we'll be deep dive into MLOps cloud services on top of AWS, Azure, and GCP. So module number 9 is where the level 4 architecture projects will be getting started. We'll be exploring, when it comes to AWS, we'll be exploring Amazon SageMaker completely from scratch. And we'll be understanding how to build a complete end-to-end level 4 architecture project on top of SageMaker Studio, which takes at least a 1 week, 1 weekend to complete it. So then comes, we'll be getting started with GCP, Vertex AI, we cover it from scratch, and learning how to build complete end-to-end level 4 architecture project on top of Vertex AI. We'll be covering Azure MLOps. We'll be getting started with Azure Machine Learning Studio, understanding how to get started to deploy an end-to-end MLOps pipelines on top of Azure Machine Learning Workspace. We'll be using the latest version 2 SDK for that particular reason. Then comes module number 10. Module number 10 is a Kubeflow. So consider that you might be an organization who want to go completely open source. Maybe you want to use open source tools like Kubeflow. So Kubeflow is a tool a lot of organization uses. For an example, Spotify. You know Spotify, we use that to listen to the music. Today, Spotify does uses Kubeflow for delivering their machine learning models to the production. So we learn how to deploy the Kubeflow stack and to create an end-to-end ML pipelines on top of it. And we do have module number 11, the new edition. So MLOps for LLMs. So it is called MLOps for LLMs, what we call it as LLM Ops, and for Gen AI too. So this is where we'll be diving deep and understanding how it's going to be different when it comes to, let's say, delivering your classical machine learning models versus large language models to the production. So this is where you will be learning how to play with, let's say, the prompt engineering and responsible AI, especially that we discussed. Then comes module number 12, understanding model monitoring. We do have a separate module for that, where you will be exploring a model monitoring SDKs on top of AWS, Azure, and GCP. We'll be picking one of a cloud, and we'll be also implementing a complete model monitoring on any cloud to monitor the model that is running in a production, for an example. So then comes module number 13, introduction to AutoML tools. AutoML tools, as I mentioned, is like a Mano tools, but we do also cover that. So where we'll be exploring a commercial tools, and we'll be also giving a one demo with a one of a tool that is outside of the market. Module number 14 is post-deployment challenges. This is where we'll be discussing the post-deployment challenges, the kind of challenges that you face once you deploy the models to the production, once you have a robust infrastructure, like latency problems, auto scaling, security aspects, all this stuff. So we'll be also using open source tools like Evidently AI for conducting data drift and data quality analysis over here. So this is about our module number 14. So we do have totally 15 modules. Out of 15 modules, our first 14 modules will be covered in a live session, and we do have module number 15 is a new edition for this batch, which is a self-paced videos. So module number 15 doesn't have an live sessions, but it's a pre-recorded videos. So what is this module number 15 is a new edition. So let's say we have categorized our entire program into like a must know things and may know things. So may know things are basically, let's say, when you folks are making any request from the previous batch participants, we also included a lot of other open source tools and a lot of other cloud platforms, but here still you'd be using the tools that we have learned till module number 14. So here you'll be learning how to get started with Jenkins, how you can adapt Jenkins into MLOps. So here you'll be understanding Jenkins. You'll be building a 2 projects, understanding Jenkins for DevOps. Then comes building an end-to-end ML pipelines using Jenkins. Here you'll be using Jenkins, the Dockers that you have learned already, and ML flow already that you have learned on the top. We'll be integrating everything. So then comes, you'll be also exploring Apache Airflow, so which is again alternative for Kubeflow. So you'll be learning Apache Airflow, how it works, and how to use Apache Airflow, which is traditionally made for data pipelines. So you'll be learning how to build traditional ETL pipelines with Apache Airflow, and how you can adapt Apache Airflow for scheduling an end-to-end ML pipelines on top of it. So we will be also exploring the Kubernetes infrastructures on top of the cloud platforms. We already explored EKS on top of AWS and Abo modules, but still we'll be exploring Google's GKE, which is Kubernetes engine, Azure Kubernetes services as well. So then comes, we'll be also covering Terraform, let's say the Terraform basics that
that you need to get started with deploying any kind of an infrastructure. Consider that you want to deploy infrastructure on AWS, Azure, GCP. How does it works? So then comes the last topic would be Argo CD or Argo workflow. So Argo is basically traditionally used for deploying an infrastructure on top of Kubernetes, but still how you can able to adapt Argo workflow to deploy your machine learning pipelines. We'll be understanding how to build an end-to-end scheduled ML pipelines with Argo workflows on top of a Kubernetes infrastructure. Obviously 15 modules, lot of tools, right, that we're going to learn from this particular program. So please do check this PDF. So here are the skills that you're going to master, the skills that you can able to add on top of your resumes, the tools that you're going to master in this particular program. And I would recommend, so you can check the pricing here, and you can scroll down here, you can able to check the actual testimonials that we have left. Please do check the testimonials, take an action. Don't miss your opportunity to rule this world by learning AI, right? It's your time. Don't lose your trying. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to share this details in a chat window. So I'm going to share this details. So the first link is for registration, where you can go to the landing page. You can proceed with the registration. And here is a link where you can download the PDF that I'm showing you. And here is the promise, the free ebooks that you can able to download. And here you call me to this number. Okay, so obviously these are the numbers that you can able to reach out to me. Maybe you have more questions, you have some concerns, you need some consulting, you can call me anytime. So I'm your person who can able to help you to make the world of yours as an AI. So I'm going to share this links in a chat window. I believe it should be available for you. So please go ahead and check this links. So now I'm going to open this session for Q&A. So please go ahead and ask your questions, and I unmute your mic. You can talk to me, right? So here we go. Let me just... So where is this option? Yeah. So here we go. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and we can have a conversation.
Hey, hi. Hi, Sharat.
Hey, hi. So yeah, so let's get started. First, you can mention your name and
yeah, my name is Mohit, and I have one question. So you said you would provide a job opportunity kind of help in this course. So how the help would be? You would be sharing the post job opportunity posts in certain groups, or
okay, simple.
Could we have to bring some referral program as well to some organizations? Or do we have any types with some
okay, how it works? So let me just try to understand. Let me just brief you that once again. Thanks for asking that question, Mohit. So when I'm talking about let's say this technical job support that we offer 6 months to 1 year, let me just help you how it works, right? So consider that. So you're asking, do we provide any job updates? Yes, we do provide job updates, but consider that we have tied up with a lot of organizations in and around India. If they have an opportunities, we do publish that. But the support is not about publishing the job updates for you, right? So that anyone can able to do it. So, but the strategy is this: I can throw you hundreds of job updates today. I can throw you hundreds of JDs today, but that doesn't mean that you will be. I mean, if I'm going to throw hundreds of JD, that doesn't mean that you will be getting a job, right? So, but how do you make your resumes as well as it can be? We do provide job updates, but when the organizations are requirements. But here our strategy is, rather than we throwing the job updates for you, because still if you go ahead and check the job portals that you do have, there are hundreds and thousands of jobs that is outside in the market. So where you can position yourself into MLOps or MLOps operations or AI operations, there are different kind of roles where you can be part of. But we don't want to just throw job updates for you, but how do you make sure you clear that technical round of interview? What's the strategy over there? That's where we want to focus a more time here. So that's why I mentioned that it's a 3-step approach. The first step is basically the resume preparation. Then comes, we'd be also updating your job portals. So we can able to make sure that you also get some more job updates starting from Naukri or maybe LinkedIn, or it can be through any other job portals like Indeed, Glassdoor, etc. Right? So when you have a solid resume and a job and a good keywords and job updates, no one is going to stop you from getting interview calls, right? So then comes the most important step here: how are you going to clear that actual technical round of interview? So maybe most of the organizations, sometimes they have 3 rounds of interviews, some might have 4 or 5, right? You will see that rare case scenario. So what's the strategy in clearing each and every technical round of an interview, right?
So that's where we want to more focus rather than sharing your job updates. So when I'm talking about third step, what we call it as JD decoding sessions. So JD decoding sessions is all about analyzing your interview situation. So what kind of a questions they're going to throw you, right? So if they're going to ask you questions related to Dockers, right? How are you going to clear that? How are you going to answer that? They're going to ask you a question. So tell me what have you done in your previous organization, right? So maybe you might be coming from a DevOps industry. Consider that you might have not done anything on top of DevOps, but how are you going to portray that you have a certain experience that you can able to deliver that? So we create a story. We help you in creating that, narrating that particular story, right? So what's your daily job looks like? So what have you done in your previous project? So how you implemented your automation on top of AWS? What kind of a tools you have used? But they will be asking a question. So why did you use that tool? Why don't you use Docker and Kubernetes as an open source tool? How do you go into answer that scenario based questions, right? So we will be helping you narrating that particular story, that able to win the particular interview conversation basically. And you will be having your probability of clearing that particular technical round of interview, so where you can able to go from the first and second round and third round where you can finally clear that. So this is where actually you need a more support rather than throwing a random job update for you. So that's how the support works, Mohit. So this is the one way. The another way is basically consider that you're already in a job, consider that you're stuck somewhere, maybe you need some assistance, maybe you need some debugging, so maybe you need some sample code, maybe you need a push basically to get started with your job, right? You can still use this technical job support. When I'm talking about you can use this support to get started with your job, that doesn't mean that we will be taking your project, we will be coding for you, you'll be sitting simply and where I will be doing this job behalf of you. It's not something like that. So the job is technical job support, where we help you in pushing you further to get started with your job. That's another way, Mohit. Yeah. So please let me know, folks, if you have anyone else has this question. So let me just start answering that. You can also go ahead and you can also mention the question in the chat window. Let me just also answering that. Let's see who is the next person who want to talk. Okay, so Ravi is, yeah, please
Hello?
go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can. So please mention your name. Likita.
Yeah, my name is Likita. I would like to know, do I require any prerequisite courses to join this course? And I'm a fresher without any experience.
Okay, so that's a good question. So there is a prerequisites, but consider that, let me just draft it pretty much easily. So consider that, so we are talking about an MLOps specialization program. So where you'll be working on operation side of an AI, but you are not the person who will be building an AI. So consider that if you're a person who want to build a AI, there's a lot of prerequisites, right? So you don't need to learn data science to become an MLOps engineer. That means you don't need Python expertise, but you need some Python basics. So we'll be doing Python. So you need to learn some basics to get started, not an expertise here. But let me just also draft that. Anyway, Likita does answer this particular question. So usually most of the folks who take our program, they ask for the question. So they might be not having a good Python skills, but they still want to brush up their Python skills. So this is what exactly we do. And obviously there are a lot of free resources, as we mentioned during our discussion. These free resources are also part of. So consider that we do have Python tutorials. Before you go ahead and get started with our program, so people who sign up, we can able to share our own Python tutorials. You don't want to sign up anything. You don't want to spend any other money. So we share you this free resources where you can able to go ahead and brush up this Python basics. And there is a practice material that we have designed. If you can able to practice, still you can become an expert in that Python, but it's up to you what level of expertise that you want to grow, right? So Python is something that is not where you would be doing Python from A to Z in this particular program. So you'd be mostly working on a tool base, CI CDs, tools, Dockers and Kubernetes basically. So the Python comes into the picture where you'll be learning how to Dockerize the models and deployment, all this stuff. You just need a basics. That's the only prerequisites, Likita, ready to that you need to have to get started with this program. So
Okay.
you do need any relevant experience apart from that. Yeah.
Hello, Sharad. So my name is Karthik. I'm an MLOps engineer myself. So basically, I saw Terraforms in like not compulsory in that curriculum list. So can you explain that Terraform is one of the most important things that I want to learn and upskill myself? So
perfect. So let's say Terraform is not mandate thing, that I never say it's mandate. Let's say here we have categorized it into must know things and may know things. So consider that when we're talking about a Terraform, let's say we are focusing on a more of an infrastructure as a code concept. So let's try to discuss what we will be doing. So in this particular program, so let's try to understand what we'll be learning in terms of an infrastructure as a code. So let's get started. Let's say when it comes to Azure, we'll be learning how to use Azure DevOps as an infrastructure as a code concept. So here you'll be learning, let's say it's a 3 different pipeline approach. The first pipeline is all about, let's say you'll be learning how to deploy the infrastructure as a code through Azure DevOps. So let's say when it comes to AWS, let's say we'll be working with something called CDK, which stands for Cloud Deployment Kit. So where you'll be learning how to work with CDK to deploy the infrastructure as a code. As along with that, so where you will be also learning a Terraform in our module number 15. So where you can also use Terraform, which is a previously open source, now it is occupied, and where you can also learn how to use a Terraform to get started with deploying any kind of infrastructure on a cloud platforms. It can be an AWS or Azure or GCP. So that's why in a module number 15, we are also covering a Terraform that is needed for you to get started, Karthik.
Got it.
Yeah, so there are a lot of other tools in terms of Terraform is not the only tool that you would be using to deploy the infrastructure. There is a different method in AWS that we'd be approaching, different method in Azure that we'd be also approaching. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I would like to answer one of a question in a chat, then I would take one of an audio. So Ravi is asking a question, is there a support available on weekdays? 100% yes. Ravi, so that's what exactly I'm talking about. So most of our support would be happening on weekdays till weekends also. So please go ahead and ask your question, folks. If anyone else has a question. So Harshad is saying, okay, need to drop out. Please share the details, any certifications. Obviously, you would be receiving a certificate from our organization. So once you're done with this particular program, and Arshad is asking a question. So do we need to have a cloud subscriptions to get started with this program? So there's no concept of subscriptions here in this clouds. Let's say when we're talking about, it can be AWS or Azure or GCP. So you go with a technique called pay as you go. And again, when we're talking about all these 3 cloud platforms, they provide a free trial. So for an example, AWS offers 1 year free trial, and Azure and GCP, they provides credits for you to get started. So consider that you're a student, you're learning an MLOps here. So this free trials would be more than enough for a learning curve. So I mean, even after completing this particular program, using this cloud resources to do practice and get started. So the free trial limits would be more than enough. And again, let's consider the worst case scenario. Maybe you got some bills and there are tricks and ways that you can able to waive these bills off, right? Okay. Okay, so Arshad is asking, whether we will be providing a GST invoice? 100% yes. So this is the training which is conducted from Citron Technologies. You'll be definitely receiving a GST invoice. Yeah. So, okay, that's any other programs that we'll be conducting. Okay, so obviously we do have other programs apart from MLOps. You can check our website. So thank you. Let me know if anyone else has a question. Please go ahead and unmute your mic and let's have a conversation. In the meantime, I will be also going and sharing the links once again to your chat window. So please go ahead and register for our program sooner, because we do have just 3 seats left for the registration. So once those 3 seats are done, we are closing. So obviously, but here is a strategy. Our program is starting from Feb 22nd. That's correct. So you might think, okay, let me just go ahead and register on a February 22nd morning. That could be a trouble, but we would be closing our registration at least 1 week before a session, but still you can register on February 22nd. But let's say in order to for easy onboarding, so at least 1 week before a session, we'll be getting started with prerequisites. You'd be creating a cloud accounts, and you need to create a couple of tickets on top of AWS, Azure DevOps, etc. And this cloud platforms takes at least 4 to 5 days. I mean, in order to clear this bills, they would be asking a question. We'll be interacting with them just for an easy onboarding. So we'll be closing a registration 1 week before a session. And so far we do have just 3 seats left under this offer. So please go ahead if you have any questions. Unmute your mic. Let's have a conversation.
This is Cliff.
Hey,
are
hi.
there any
Yeah.
certification? Are there any certifications that we would need as well to go along with this stuff?
Definitely
AWS
not.
practitioner. Yeah.
Got it. So we never came across any kind of a roadblocks from our because I'm trying to refer to what my previous participants have done. So you don't need any other certification programs apart from this. So let me also try to correlate with what is already related to. So consider that when I'm talking about our MLOps specialization program, so we do cover the cloud-based tools, which is already part of an existing certification. So, when we're talking about MLOps, there is no cloud certification so far, which is called MLOps. But consider that the kind of tools that we cover across all these clouds. For an example, it can be on top of AWS. We'll be exploring Amazon SageMaker Studio, which is part of AWS machine learning specialty again, right? So, or maybe let's say we are talking about Elastic Kubernetes service or Docker and Kubernetes, which is also part of, let's say, AWS machine learning specialty. So when it comes to Azure, we'll be covering Azure Machine Learning Workspace, which is again part of, let's say, Azure Data Science Certification Program. Similarly, a GCP has its own data science certification program, which is into Vertex AI, for an example. Those tools that we covered here, which is part of an other certifications programs already. And let's say we do cover Kubernetes, and Kubernetes has its own certification, so which is called Kubernetes certification, which also helps you to clear that particular certifications. So these tools are part of that existing certification programs already. Yeah, Cliff, I believe I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so let me just go ahead and okay, Balaji asking question: what are the prerequisites for this program? Consider I'm a Java developer and some knowledge on DevOps. So can I learn this course? If yes, which job I can able to apply for this particular program? So let's say Balaji asked this question. He's a Java developer. We do have a lot of Java developers and DevOps people. You will see a lot of DevOps people taking our program. See, consider that. Let's try to relate. Let's try to analyze the situation. Balaji is coming from both Java and DevOps knowledge. Okay, so consider that he has a good idea about DevOps. That means he already understand how CI/CD, the source versioning works, right? So the kind of a position that Balaji can able to apply, obviously an MLOps engineering. So maybe as a I don't know how many years of experience that you have, Balaji. Based on that, I can still recommend you the positions. But still, you need to have some solid story that it can able to win. So consider that. So Balaji has coming from DevOps background, for an example, with Java development background. But still, let's say consider that we can portray it in your resume. Still, you have worked as a DevOps engineer, but consider that you have a data science team in your organization. But there are DevOps engineers, what I know, they might be not working as a full-fledged MLOps engineering job role, but I know this DevOps engineers are working with the existing CI/CD tools and source versioning tools, and they are helping their data science team to deliver a model to the production. So that's the story that you can able to portray, Balaji, which can win in your interview actually. So that's how you can able to get started. And as you're already coming from the Java development background, you have a good sense of the programming, so that really helps you to get started with this particular program, Balaji. Yeah, please folks, get started. If you have any more questions, unmute your mic, let's have a conversation. Okay, in the meantime, someone is going to ask the question. I will be going ahead and I will be showing you what happened with the deployment of a model. Okay, so here we go. Please go ahead and start, plan for the question. In the meantime, I will be showing the demo. Let me just complete that. So here we go. So I'm in a Amazon SageMaker endpoint console over here. You can able to see that. So here you can able to see that my endpoint, so it's not yet available. I will be quickly going ahead and refreshing it. So now you could able to see that. So my endpoint, where you can see that my model got deployed to the production so far, right? So just give me a sec. So let me just start showing you. So now the abalone model that I'm talking about, so now which got successfully deployed to the production, that's what exactly you can see. So it is deployed to a real-time endpoint. So which I'm talking about, it is deployed to a very low latency endpoint. That means I can go ahead and invoke this model in order to generate the predictions that I need. For an example, I can invoke it, right? So here we go. So now let me just go ahead and open this endpoint. And here you can able to see that here is a REST API that we have created where the model is deployed. So now I can able to use this REST API. This REST API would be given to your developers where they would be building obviously the front end applications that we're talking about. So where they can able to use this to invoke, the model through their applications they're going to build, right? And so this is the model. It's actually running on a machine called ml.m5.xlarge. It has around 4 GB RAM and around 4 virtual machine CPUs. And so here you can able to see that we do have this test inference option. So this is where You can go ahead and do the initial testing. That means you can go ahead and invoke this model. So that means you can check whether the model is working, whether it's generating some predictions or not. Okay, so I will be showing how to invoke this model in some time. Let's see if anyone else has a question. And in the meantime, please go ahead and unmute your mic, so I can just go ahead and start answering your questions. Yeah, let's see. So if you have questions, go ahead and unmute your mic. Let's have a conversation. In the meantime, let me just also go ahead and grab a data that I can able to use it for invoking my model here. Perfect. So let me just also check some of the questions in the chat window in the meantime that you're going to ask a question. So cloud subscriptions. Okay, Murli asking a question. So cloud subscriptions will be provided. Free accounts are obviously, as a Murli, as I mentioned. So you can create a free trial account. That would be more than enough, Murli. I guess someone is talking. Please go ahead and unmute your mic.
Sure. This is Ravi. So
Hey,
like
Ravi.
once I subscribe like advance, can I get recordings access, previous recordings?
100% yes. So so that means, let's say if you go ahead and register for advanced plan, let's say you will be going ahead and registering for an advanced plan right now. In next 24 hours, you will be getting an access to our advanced plus plan. That means you can start accessing our recordings with the support from us. I mean, I will be available for you to support in the debugging before the session starts. Doesn't matter. So we will be started supporting you. So you'll be getting an access to the recordings immediately. So recordings, the slides, materials, the GitHub repositories that we provide, everything right away. Yep, Ravi. So, okay, so here we go. So go ahead and grab the offers. Unfortunately, we do have just 3 seats left for this batch. Okay, so let me just quickly show you how do I invoke a model. See, folks, now the model is running in a production. So now let us try to understand how to test this model. Let's say as an MLOps engineer, you want to test it, you want to verify it, whether the model is working fine, how much time it takes to invoke a model. So this is where you have a test inference window, right? So there are different methods to test your model. You can write a curl command, you can invoke a model, or you can simply use this test inference method, right? So here I have my data set. So this is the features that I would be inputting, the features that relates to an abalone, obviously abalone that we're talking about, a seafood. So I would be inputting the features where my model will be generating a predictions. I would be selecting a data type. Consider that you might be having a data packed as a JSON file, right? Obviously the input customer data, text file, CSV file, right? Or it can be libsvm. I have a libsvm format. So I'll be simply copy pasting my data here, and you will able to see towards, let's say for an example, 1 second. So towards right side of my screen over here, you will see the predictions that is generated by model. I'm invoking in a real time right now. Okay. So let's go ahead and invoke. So I will be going ahead and clicking send request. And here you should be able to see, yeah, I got a prediction. So you can see the predictions happens faster, right? Obviously AI need to be faster, right? Everyone likes the speed. So here you can able to see that. So that's a beauty of, let's say, the real-time endpoint. So for the reason it's called real-time endpoint, that means when you're invoking a model, it has to generate a predictions in a real time. So here you can able to see the output object that got printed. So here you can able to see the body says 10.65. That's an actual age of an abalone. And then we have a content type and other metadata informations here. So this is a body. So this is how, as an MLOps engineer, still you can, after deploying a model, you can verify how to invoke a model. This is a one method. So we'll be exploring a different methods in AWS Azure after you deploying the models to the, let's say, the Docker at Kubernetes. There are different methods that we'll be following, right? So yeah, so don't miss it. And obviously make your journey, I mean, faster to reach to the AI industry, right? Obviously the market is open today. There's a lot of different offers, and where we can able to help you fast track your journey to get into the AI industry, right? Okay, so go ahead and listen to our testimonials, because our participants does talks about the success of our program. So yeah, so that's about the demo. So please go ahead and ask your question. I'm going to spare a few more minutes, folks. Let's see if you have any questions. In the meantime, someone talks, I will check the chat window if you have any questions there. Okay, so let me just check the question. Okay, will scheduled debugging sessions will be recorded? Okay, so Krishna is asking a questions. So whether this debugging sessions will be recorded or not, 100%, it can be the debugging sessions, it can be the live sessions, all these sessions will be recorded and will be provided. So including the debugging sessions will be recorded. So you'll be getting an access to this debugging sessions as well. Okay.
Hello, I'm Likita.
Yeah, Likita. Yep.
Will the debugging session be one-on-one or it will be in a
one-on-one.
group?
So
Okay.
it will be 101. So 101, consider that. So there are different slots that are available. So consider that at least 2 to 3 fixed debugging, I mean, scheduled debugging sessions we'll be conducting.
Okay,
So
I will be
when it
living
comes
in
to
US. Will it become a problem with the timings?
Yeah, that's where I'm going to address your question. I got it, Likita. So consider that we do have folks joining from UK, US, across the globe, in India for India too. Let's say we'd be having on a weekdays, we would be, I mean, as I mentioned, when it comes to debugging sessions, Likita, there are two types. One is a scheduled, another one is unscheduled. So when it comes to a scheduled debugging session, consider that we do have 2 to 3 debugging schedules. So consider that maybe there are two people who opted for today. Consider that if we have a today is 8th of February. So let's say we have two people joining our debugging session. It's a first come, first serve. So consider that if a person who joins first, I would be assisting his problems first, his errors or his questions. He would be sharing a screen. Then once I'm done with that person, then I would be going to another person. That's how it's going to be 101. So consider that when it comes to the scheduled debugging sessions, we would be having a debugging sessions around 7 p.m. IST every day. So consider that when it comes to unscheduled debugging sessions, this is where you can gain an advantage. Consider that maybe you're not available on a 7 p.m. IST time zone. Maybe consider that it's a 10 p.m. IST here in India, for an example. Let's say you want to connect right now. All you need to do, just ping us and we'll check the availability and we can connect. So that's how it's going to work. So you can either join the scheduled debugging sessions or unscheduled debugging sessions. You can check according to your time convenience. You can join the debugging sessions. So it won't be a problem. Okay, so Suresh is asking a question. Yeah, Likita, sorry, go ahead.
I have one more question. Like, you have mentioned in the advanced course that you will be providing assistance in the job search. Like, how it will be utilized to me in the US regarding the 6 months job support?
So consider that whether you are in US or UK or India, doesn't matter. So the job support works same in every country, right? So still you got the same. You have your resume that has to be updated. Still you have your own job portals in US and UK that has to be updated. And third thing is a very important thing. Still, like you would be having a JD before you go ahead and attend an interview. So where you need a support in decoding that particular JD, so we can able to connect in a same the support meetings that we conduct, so where we can help you in decoding that particular JD, right? So again, so every organizations, whether it is a organization is in UK or US and India, they would be using the same MLOps technologies, whether they would be using AWS or Azure, GCP or open source tools. So our support is global. It does works for the peoples in India, it does works for the peoples in UK or US or any other country.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. So I have one question before anyone else asks. So Suresh is asking a question: is Jenkins pipelines will be applicable here to build? Yes, Suresh. In case if you missed that, yes, Jenkins is also part of our program. So where you will be also learning how to build, how to include Jenkins as a CI/CD tool uh, to be part of your end-to-end ML pipeline. So here we got an awesome project where you'll be including Jenkins along with other tools, like how to use Jenkins with Docker and ML flow to build a one end-to-end ML pipelines, for an example. Yes, Jenkins is part of this particular program. So Ajayan, sorry if I'm pronouncing your names wrong. How DevOps peoples can fit in this? DevOps peoples are the best peoples to fit in this particular program, as I mentioned. So DevOps folks, you folks are already coming from the knowledge of CI/CD and DevOps. You do understand the software development lifecycle. And obviously, DevOps and MLOps is different. You will be learning in this particular program with an existing knowledge of DevOps. You'll be learning rest of the other MLOps tools. And how you will be building an automation to deliver any kind of an AI to the production. So what's an advantage for the DevOps peoples here? You have an added experience that you can represent. You're already coming from DevOps background. So can we get the recordings of a session? So yes, so you'll be also getting an access to the recordings when I'm talking about our live sessions. Every Monday, you'll be receiving an access to the recordings. So where you can able to log into the portal and you can start accessing that. So if it Allur Nagarjun says, is that fine if I have more than 13 years of experience? 100% yes. So Allu Arjun, like let's say when it comes to you have 13 years of experience, we can analyze what kind of a experience you have, what kind of a roadmap you had previously, and we'll see what's the related stuff that matches for MLOps. Based on that, you can start applying for MLOps engineering job roles. You will see a lot of senior level positions in MLOps basically. Starting from beginner level positions. Let's say you want to just work as an MLOps engineer, or you want to work on a senior level of positions. Allu Nagarjun said does works. Okay, perfect. Okay, saying that, so what's the duration of this particular program? So Sumit is asking. So let's say we are talking about a 12 weekends starting from February 22nd. So somewhere it goes to around 3 months program it is. So that means 12 weekends of live sessions, and obviously more than 20 to 25 hours of debugging sessions in case based on the joining. So that's the duration of this particular program. And with 101 debugging sessions, where the more personal care will be given for the participants. So debugging sessions is where you can get more time. You can talk, you can ask more questions. You can bug me as many times you want. Yep. Okay, perfect. So let me know if you folks, anyone else has a question. Okay, I'm going to spare 2 more minutes. Let's see if you folks have any questions. Okay,
how much patent knowledge is required, and what is the roadmap for data engineering MLOps?
Perfect. So, so can I know your name first? It's
I'm Purna.
Purna. Hi, Purna. So you're a data engineer, and we're talking about how you can be part of an MLOps engineer. So let's say when it comes to the data engineers, I did mention about, so consider that if I go back to the slides, so consider that who will be part of your journey for an example. So data engineers are someone who is already part of, let's say the AI industry. So consider that you might be a data engineer. So currently you might be not serving an AI industry. So there are a lot of MLOps positions, right? Who is looking for, so a lot of MLOps engineering positions. Along with MLOps, there are a lot of JDs you can able to see. They would be also looking for data engineering as well in it. So I'm talking about, it's a sort of data engineering plus MLOps, but they call it as MLOps engineer. That means as an MLOps engineer, you would be also taking care of their data pipelines for harvesting a data for machine learning use cases. So the relevant experience as a data engineer, they would be looking forward a good knowledge on ETL, PySpark for an example. So which already any data engineers has, right? So that could be an opportunity, Purna, that you can able to see. So the existing skill set that you do have is already a data engineer. On top of data engineer, once you upskill into MLOps, so you have both data engineering and MLOps in your plate. But what's the advantage of it? It can able to increase your salary, maybe a 2x or 3x. I will give you one example. So I did mention about a testimonial of a senior data scientist. See, data scientists are most of the time they will be building a models. So data scientists, they won't be doing an MLOps, the end-to-end MLOps, but they will be part of an MLOps, but they need to learn MLOps. See, consider that that's how it's going to work. MLOps is all at end of the day, it's a collaboration and communication between a team. So let me just go back to the slide. One second, where is this job opportunities? Here we go. One second. Yeah. So consider that you can be a data scientist, but still you need to understand what is MLOps, because as a data scientist, you'd be working with your MLOps engineers, pushing the models to model registries. You will be working with CI/CD tools. You would be working with data versioning tools as well. So consider that when it comes to as a data engineer, you would be working with data pipelines, but as well as you would be working with an MLOps engineering team. So to collaborate and give the right version of a data for them. So what happens? A lot of organizations, they hiring MLOps engineers who has data engineering skill sets. So that could be the position that you need to look into, because the Sandeep, what I mentioned, he is a data scientist. He upskilled into MLOps, but the kind of a role that he opted for, MLOps plus data science. That means he's taking care of both data science plus MLOps. So in your for your position, you'd be taking care of both data engineering plus MLOps. So because there might be an organization, they would be working with a more data intensive workload where they might be getting a streaming data, and they would be using the streaming data for training the models. So that could be organizations where you can find real opportunity. Purna, yeah.
So technically, we will be given models by data scientists, and we will deploy the models and maintain them as an MLOps.
Exactly. See, consider that as a data
We
engineer.
don't get to write any models or anything.
No, MLOps engineers are not data scientists. You don't build models. See, consider that when Purna becomes an MLOps engineer, and let's say you're opting for a role which would look like this. So you would be handling data pipelines. So that means, see, consider that this is how it's going to work. See, consider that let's imagine let's say there are different kind of storage platforms, let's consider that, where your organization is harvesting a data. So your customers are inputting a data to various different data resources. It can be it can be a storage platforms like S3 in AWS, or like a databases. So consider that what, as a data engineer, you would be doing. Let's say consider that you are building a data pipelines to, I'm sorry, it's gone. Okay, so let's say you would be building a data pipelines to harvest the data from different storage platforms. Let's say you'll be doing an ETL, whatever it is, and let's say you'll be pushing the data. Consider that all this data you're converting into CSV files, and let's say you're putting it in an S3 bucket, for an example. So this is a data pipeline that you do have. So along with that, you'd be also taking care of an MLOps pipelines. That means this is, let's say this is a one pipeline, the another pipeline that you'd be working. So where you would be building an MLOps pipeline, taking, let's say your data will be versioned here. Let's say consider that you have version 1. So let's say every version of data creates in every 3 months, for an example. Every 3 months you create the different version. So you'll be grabbing the latest version, let's say version 2, and you'll be using this version 2, and you'll be building a pipeline which actually does, let's say, data pre-processing, model training, model evaluation, and then comes registering this model to model registry. It's here you will be registering your own versions of models. Your version 2 is the latest one, and taking the version 2 of your model and going it and deployment, right? You'll be deploying this model to the production. So maybe you want to deploy to Dockers, Kubernetes, right? Or maybe the real-time endpoint that I mentioned. So this would be the next pipeline that you'd be also focusing on. So, but here comes the various different stakeholders. So let's say consider that when it comes to the model training, model evaluation, so this is where, let's consider that your data scientist would be coming into the picture. So like model training, model evaluation, or model registration. So data scientists would be working with that. So then comes, when it comes to model deployment, some organizations, they might be having ML engineers, right? But consider this entire infrastructure, this pipeline part would be managed by an MLOps engineer, basically, right? That's what exactly can be fitted. So consider that here you should find a position which has both data engineering and MLOps, basically, because you're already good at data engineering. Then you can look for an MLOps as well. So that would boost your salary because you're already a data engineer. Or you can simply look for MLOps engineering only. That also works. Okay. So I'm going to spare 2 more minutes. I believe I have answered all the questions in the chat. Okay, saying that. Okay, folks, I believe you enjoyed our program, and so don't miss this awesome opportunities. So when it comes to, as I mentioned, when it comes to AI, the timing matters, right? So because AI is transforming faster than any industry, and people who come early get the biggest piece of a cake they can eat, and if you come late, you would be just getting a small pinches of maybe the butter and the bread over there, but maybe not the biggest piece of a cake. Don't lose this opportunity. Upskill faster, rule the world of AI, and we can able to help you do that. We can able to help you fast track your journey into AI. Thank you so much. I believe you enjoyed your demo. Please go ahead and call me, text me if you have more questions. And so this let's say this offer, I mean, we are talking about let's say we do have just 3 seats left for this particular batch. So please go ahead and register faster, so where you can register for basic and get updated to advanced, or register for advanced and you can get upgraded to advanced plus plan. That means you can get started with our program in next 24 hours, right? So followed by that, are you interested in price cut? So go ahead. Are you looking for an EMI option, so where you can able to split your payment for the next 6 months? Just ping us. Let's say those people who are looking for a price cut, discount offer, an EMI offer, just ping us, so my team can able to provide you the registration links that you can able to use it. So thank you so much. Saying that, so this is Sharat Kumar. Don't miss our MLOps specialization program, and if you have any questions, please feel free to call me, text me anytime. Thank you, folks. Enjoy your day, and let's connect back in your live sessions. Bye, folks. Yeah. Perfect. Here we go. Okay, so yeah, Puna is how much Python knowledge we need. As I mentioned, you just when it comes to MLOps engineering, you just need to have a basics. But let's say when I'm trying to compare with the data scientist, you don't need to know the data science, Python, the expertise and mathematics, statistics, the probability, all this stuff. Just having a basics in Python does works, Puna. So thank you so much, folks. Enjoy your day. We'll see you. We'll connect in our live sessions. Yeah, bye, folks.